Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is Open Mic. Now, what is Open Mic? Well, I'm awfully glad that you asked. See, every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Come join us, why don't you? Anyway, in the second hour of the show, we just take live questions. But here on the weekends, on Saturdays, that's all we do. We just take live, open questions. It is your platform to talk about things you want to talk about, specifically kind of focusing around the things that we all love. Movies, movie news, TV, all that sort of stuff. And last night was interesting. I'm going to share a couple things with you guys. So last night, we had a double feature. We decided to watch Bloodshot. We decided to watch Vin Diesel's Bloodshot, and we decided to watch Invisible Man again. God, I love that movie. It's honestly a young year, all that kind of stuff, but it's my second favorite movie of the year still, just behind The Gentleman. But anyway, we saw Bloodshot, and I think if Sony were to ask me to give them a quote to put on the movie poster for Bloodshot, my quote would be this: Bloodshot is a movie. That would probably be my quote for that. But you know, the other thing, guys, here, before we get into the questions, start getting caught up on things, you know, technology is great. Technology is wonderful. Technology is our friend. But sometimes technology is a jerk and just reminds us of things. So I use Google Calendar. That's how I use Google Suite stuff mostly to keep my life organized. I use Google Docs. For all I don't use Microsoft Office. I've been using Google Docs for like 6 years now, or forever long, maybe even longer than that. I use Google Calendar. I use Google Drive is what I use for all my documents and things like that, and all my files. I just use it a lot. So that includes Google Calendar. I'm very, very reliant on Google Calendar to keep my life in order. And one of the things that Google Calendar does is that it reminds you of things coming up, right? That's one of the good things it does, is say, hey, don't forget you got this coming up. Well, I had a reminder from Google Calendars that just kind of proves that Google Calendars can be a bit of a jerk. Because I put this up on my Twitter today. It says, look at that. This is true. My Google Calendar just reminded me that Ann and I have a flight tomorrow to Florida to celebrate her birthday with Disney World, Universal Florida, and WrestleMania. Should be a great trip. Thanks, Google Calendar. So yeah, that was a little bit of a harsh, swift kick in the balls. A little bit of a reminder of that, of everything going on. But hey, it is what it is. We make lemonade out of lemons. And that's what we're going to do here today, guys. So let's not waste any time. Let's start getting caught up on all the questions that we got. A bunch of you guys have been sending in stuff. So let's start getting caught up by some of the leftover questions from yesterday. And then we'll roll into the new questions today. Juan Espinoza writes, hope you're all doing well. A couple of shows ago, on the conversation about Wonder Woman score, the conversation about the Wonder Woman score came up, and it got me thinking, wow, the DCEU scores are beyond epic. They almost have a godlike sound to them. In my opinion, it's the one thing DC does better than the MCU. That's one of two. Where's two of two? There it is. I'm not trying to pin both brands against one another. Just my observation. What are you going to do when you are not saving the world? I listen to that at least 2 or 3 times a week when I get in the shower. I put on, that's the Man of Steel Superman theme, just gorgeous. Beautiful Lie, Must There Be a Superman are just examples of the masterpieces that is the DCEU scores. Your thoughts? Listen, I've said for a long time, look, all film is subjective. We all love and hate different things. Sometimes we love the things that are popular. Sometimes we don't like the things that are popular, and vice versa. I contend that while I have enjoyed all the DCEU movies, I've enjoyed all the DCU movies, but, you know, the MCU has just overall done a better job, in my opinion. Now, other people have different opinions, and that's totally cool. I'm just saying from my point of view, the MCU, to me, is fairly clearly ahead of the DC film stuff right now. I still enjoy the DC stuff, don't get me wrong, but the MCU stuff is clearly ahead. But I've always thought that the one exception to that is score. Well, there's another area that I think they are consistently better. They make consistently better trailers. Not that the MCU hasn't had some fantastic trailers. They absolutely have. But man, DC has known how to make trailers, but also score. The music in the DC movies, not that there isn't some really good score music in the MCU. Absolutely there is. I'm just saying, I think consistently, I feel like the DCU's done a little bit of a better job in that area. So anyway, but even that's all subjective. But yeah, absolutely. The Wonder Woman. I love the Wonder Woman theme. like with that electric cello and everything. Don't you just love hearing? You should take my clip of me doing that and make it your ringtone. There you go. You're welcome. I just did it twice for you. So anyway, yes, and then the Man of Steel stuff, like, I don't know. I just really, really like the stuff that they've done there once, so I agree with you completely. Okay, next up, where are we at here? Jason writes, seems like we're close to running out of 2020 movies not on VOD. Depending on how long this goes, do you think studios will pull a Trolls and release smaller films, not blockbusters, on VOD that they originally meant to put in theaters? It's unlikely, but possible. But I think there would have to be a very specific set of criteria in place for like a Sony or a Paramount or a Disney or a Warner Brothers to do that. And I think there's some very, very specific criteria. I think number one, it has to be a movie that they already have very little confidence in. Because look, think of it this way. Let's say you have a some kind of payout ticket. Let's say you've got like this ticket, right? Now you can go and cash it in right now and get $20 right now. You can go and cash in this ticket right now and go get yourself $20. Or you could wait 6 months, then go cash in your ticket and get $200. Now there are advantages saying, hey, I could use the $20 right now. I could use the $20 right now. And there are some situations like, listen, if I'm completely flat broke, literally don't have a dime to my name, guess what? $20 to me right now is probably more valuable than $200 later down the line, right? Depending on the circumstances. Under most other circumstances, $200 6 months from now is more valuable than $20 right now. So most of the time you hold on to that ticket. You say, no, I'll keep this ticket in my pocket and wait 6 months and go, oh yeah, it's time for me to turn this ticket. And now you get $200. But there are some situations where maybe right now, the 20 right now is actually more valuable than the 200 down the line. So that's the situation that the studios are facing with the movies right now. They can put it out on VOD and make back a little bit of their money, but it's going to pale in comparison to the money that it will make in theater. So if you have a situation, though, where you're a studio and you've got a movie and you don't have any faith in that movie and you think this movie... Look, that's the situation with Universal and Trolls. Trolls was going to flop. The tracking numbers for Trolls, long before the Corona stuff came out, was showing that Trolls 2 was going to drop more than 50% from its opening weekend numbers of Trolls 1 to Trolls 2. Trolls 2 was going to open to less than half of what Trolls 1 opened with. And it wasn't getting any buzz. Nobody was talking. There was no energy surrounding it. So they kind of thought, well, let's just throw this one on VOD. But they handled it wrong. But I think if a studio like Sony or Warner Bros., whatever, if they have one or two films in their lineup where they're really thinking, you know what? It's not even worth it for us to put any money into a marketing campaign for this movie. Like, if we put $30 million into a marketing campaign for X movie, we don't even think we're going to get that $30 million back, let alone all the money we spent on the movie making it. Maybe we should just drop it on VOD. I think there are some specific circumstances, just like some specific circumstances that makes it more valuable for you or I to claim that ticket for $20 today instead of $200 for later. I think there are specific circumstances where there might be a couple of movies that might be facing that same type of dilemma. And if that's the case, and if the studios talk to the movie theaters well in advance and start talking through the problems they're having with their movie, then it can be done. So yeah, I think it's possible, but again, I think it has to be done under a very specific set of circumstances. That's just my thought on that at any rate. Okay, let's keep on moving here. Next up comes to us from Chris Warden, who writes, watched Spencer Confidential last night. For a Netflix movie, it's actually pretty good, and I could easily see them turning it into a franchise, as I'm guessing the most expensive thing about making it is probably paying Mark Wahlberg's salary. You know what? I've heard some okay things about that movie. I haven't watched it myself. I was actually planning on watching that this weekend. There were a couple things I was planning on watching this weekend. Spencer Confidential was one of them. I'll be honest with you. It kind of just came... Didn't seem like it appealed to me at all, but I've been hearing a couple of people, Chris, like yourself, telling me they saw it and they actually didn't think it was all that bad. So I'm not hearing anybody saying anything great about it, but I'm hearing a lot of, you know what? Especially for a Netflix original, not bad. So yeah, I think I'm going to check that out myself this weekend. So I don't know about the franchisability of it because I haven't seen it yet, but it is one I'm going to check out because you and several other people are telling me it's worth checking out. So I think I will do that. All right. Jason writes, also movie recommendation, Flirting with Disaster with Ben. Oh, that's an older one, I think. Flirting with Disaster with Ben Stiller, Téa Leoni, who I love her, Patricia Arquette, Mary Tyler Moore, Alan Alda, some of the greats, Lily Tomlin, Richard Jenkins, and Josh Thanos Brolin, David O. Russell's second movie from 1996, one of my favorite comedies, and one that I never watched. I never watched Flirting with Disaster. I never did. But I mean, listen to that. Listen to this cast again. And for like my mom and dad's generation, this is like major A-list, okay? Alan Alda, Mary Tyler Moore, Lily Tomlin, Richard Jenkins is always great for any generation of person. So that says, and then you got Josh Brolin in there too. Then Ben Stiller, I love Téa Leoni, Patricia Arquette's always great. That's a stacked cast. And, I mean, it's a David O. Russell movie, and I think he's a terrific director. I don't love every single one of his movies, but he's terrific. So that's one I should probably put on the radar. Thank you for the recommendation, Jason. All right, next up. That was Juan's. We already got to his. CDP writes, hey, John, this is Carlos Sosa. I've started reading Lords of the Sith and finished reading Bloodline. Any other books you'd recommend? Well, if you're looking to stay, since those are both Star Wars universe books, and you're looking to stay in Star Wars, if you like Bloodline, then the author of Bloodline, Claudia Gray, she wrote another Star Wars novel, and you guys have heard me recommend this one before. It is Lost Stars. It is Claudia Gray's best book. It is a very unique, different look at the Star Wars universe through the eyes of two young people who we have never met before, looking at and observing the unfolding of the events of Star Wars: A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. It's beautifully done. It's a wonderfully done book. I highly recommend it. So if you liked, Lords of the Sith is my favorite Star Wars novel right now, but my second favorite is Lost Stars. So if you enjoyed Bloodline, I highly encourage you to check out Lost Stars. I think it's Claudia Gray's best work in the Star Wars universe. All right. Simon writes, hi, Rob, who is unfortunately not here right now. Please give us your review of Star Trek Picard, last episode and season. Well, listen, I wouldn't let Rob go on a 10-minute thing in a Q&A session like this anyway. He would just say he hates it. Rob hates Picard, and he hates Discovery, and he hates all things Star Trek that have come since the J.J. Abrams era. I mean, that's just what he does. I mean, hey, he hates those things, and there are other people who hate those things too. That's great. I have not seen the season finale of Picard yet. I have not seen the season finale of Picard. I got to tell you, though, I've loved Picard. I'm not saying it's the best Star Trek series ever. It's not. But I have really enjoyed Picard. So, again, I have not seen the final episode yet, but I have found this entire season to be, it's been both nostalgic and new all at the same time, which is a very delicate dance to try to choreograph, to take advantage of the nostalgia while also being something unique and new in its own right. And I found Picard has done both, and I think it's been wonderful. Rob hates it, though. Rob absolutely despises it. But me, I gotta say, I actually quite enjoy it a lot. All right. Paula writes, hey, John, a movie that I recommend is from 2008 with Anne Hathaway called Passengers. Yeah, that's with David Morse is in that, one of my favorite character actors of all time. And Jason Lee, not Jason Lee. What's the from the horror series that's going on right now? Why am I forgetting the actor's name? Anyway, so the basic gist of it, it's not a bad little film. It's not a bad little film. The basic gist of it is, so Anne Hathaway is like this counselor, right? And there's a plane goes down. There's these survivors, and she starts counseling the survivors. And there's a supernatural twist to it, and then there's a mystery twist to it. It's not a bad little film. It is killing me remembering this guy's name. It's the dude in The Conjuring. It's the lead guy in the Conjuring movies. And why am I forgetting this actor's name? It's killing me here. And how do I remember David Morse's name, but I can't remember this actor's name? Anyway, if you guys remember it, let me know, and I'll remember. But yeah, it's actually not a bad little one. It's not one I've gone back to, but I think I only saw it the once. But I think I remember thinking it was not bad. So actually, that's a deep cut, Paula. All right, Curtis Lopez writes, Let's see. Patrick Wilson. Thank you, Larry and Matt and Omar in this. Patrick Wilson. There we go. Thank you for that. All right. Where are we at here? Curtis Lopez writes, John, do you have a Tesseract glowing behind you? That is my secret, and it's none of your damn business. Anyway. David House writes, can a comedy special qualify for the Oscars? No, Oscars are for movies, not for television. So just unless you're talking about like a something like a Kevin Smith theatrical release or like an Eddie Murphy Raw. Yeah, theoretically, those ones, comedy specials released to as a movie, yeah, they qualify. They do qualify. I mean, you'd have a really hard time ever seriously considering one, but they do qualify technically as long as they meet the eligibility requirements of, you know, playing in a theater in New York, playing in a theater in Los Angeles, a few other technical things, but once they meet those, they absolutely qualify. Okay, Francisco C. writes, Hellboy 2019 had some good stuff, but not good enough. No, you know what? It did. The David Harbour Hellboy had a few decent things about it. I thought David Harbour himself was a good Hellboy. I like the look of it. There was a nice little sense of adventure to it, but unfortunately, all the stuff that they did not do well, let's just put it that way, far outweighed the stuff that it did do well, at least in my opinion. But again, all film's subjective. Some people may really, really like the movie, and that's awesome. For most of us, it didn't really work, which is too bad. But you're right, it absolutely had some good things to it. Jesse writes, if they shot in June, will the first 30 minutes of Doctor Strange 2 be Strange and Wanda talking over Skype? Well, I mean, here's the funny thing. You know, it's funny you bring that up because, you know, I'm in the midst of trying to make a documentary right now. And I still have some interviews to do. I'm through most of the interviews that I need to do, but I still have a couple I need to do. And I'm honestly thinking about doing the last few interviews I got to do over Skype. It's not ideal, but I have no idea how long until I'm able to actually go and meet with people in person and set up in a studio and stuff like that. So I'm thinking about just doing it over Skype anyway. It is funny. You mentioned that the last bit of it will be that, but it brings up a more serious issue about something the MCU is facing right now. And that thing that the MCU is facing right now is, you know, how is all this stuff going to, all this stuff, we look at the movies that are coming out right now and we see, oh, well, Black Widow has been delayed. Okay. And we're thinking of it in very finite terms. The reality is, though, is that everything going on right now could cause absolute chaos with the overall. I'm not just talking about the movies coming out soon. I'm talking about for the next few years. It could cause absolute chaos to what's going on with the MCU. And the reason it may cause absolute chaos with what's going on in the MCU is, let me bring this up here. Think of it in these terms, and I'll have this with me in the picture and then with me out of the picture. But so Black Widow, here's an overview of Phase 4, right? Black Widow is supposed to come out May 1st. Well, we know that's not happening, so that's been bumped. Next thing, fall of 2020, Falcon and Winter Soldier, but we know that shooting on that has been delayed. Like, they were in the midst, I think they were well into shooting Falcon and Winter Soldier, but then they got delayed because of everything going on. Eternals, I believe, is done, but there might still be a lot of post-production work to do, which can't be done right now because all the offices are closed. We know that Shang-Chi, which is supposed to come out on February 12th of 2021, now we're getting way down the road. But Shang-Chi just recently shut things down, so we know that. The director himself thought he might have had the coronavirus when got tested. Apparently he's good, though. Then, of course, WandaVision, Doctor Strange, WandaVision, things like that. Okay, so that's all well and good. It's like, okay, so Falcon Winter Soldier might get a little bit of a bump. Black Widow, we know, has already been delayed off the May 1st, 2021. Then we get into the later stuff. So, I mean, okay, no big deal, right? Well, here's where it could become a big deal. It all depends on how interconnected these stories are supposed to be. For example, And now here we are just speculating at this point, so keep that in mind. But this is where it could get very convoluted and very messy and cause a lot of chaos for the MCU. Let's say, and we don't know this is true, but I'm just saying, let's say Kevin Feige charted this out where Black Widow and the events of Black Widow are absolutely necessary for us to know in order for us to watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like something key that happens in Black Widow, something key, something pivotal, something foundational. I'm not saying there is, I'm just saying if there is. And there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts here, a lot of speculation. But if there is, well then now all of a sudden Black Widow getting pushed is going to desperately necessitate that Falcon and the Winter Soldier now gets pushed. And by how much and by how long? And then how much distance does Disney want there to be between Black Widow and Winter Soldier? Right? If they want there to be a good 3-4 month window and Black Widow gets moved 6 months, I don't know. Well, now look at the domino effect that starts to happen. It all depends on how interconnected were they planning on these movies being. Now, if they're not all that much interconnected, then this doesn't become that big of a problem, right? Then, okay, Falcon and Winter Soldier comes out before Black Widow. No big deal. Okay, Eternals, I guess it wasn't really connected to anything else. We can play that as, and everything gets right back on schedule. But if, and this is a huge if we're talking about a situation here where a lot of these, especially initial things, are desperately interconnected, then all these things you're looking at here, Black Widow, Falcon Winter Soldier, Eternal, Shang-Chi, WandaVision, Doctor Strange 2, Loki, the What If series, Hawkeye, Thor, all these things start to become dominoes. They all start to become dominoes that can start to fall, right? As one falls out of place, it creates an effect and an impact on the next, and then on the next, and on the next. And what I'm saying here is, depending on how Kevin Feige has structured all this out, if he's got a lot of these things interconnected heavily, that one relies on the other to come out first, and they need to be in a certain order and blah, 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 then like a 3 or 4 month bump and disturbance right now could cause scheduling ramifications going well past phase 4 and maybe even into phase 5. Because if they are, guess what? Loki is not coming out in the spring of 2021. It's going to come out sometime much later. Hawkeye is not going to come out in the fall of 2021. It's going to get bumped. Eternals is not going to come out November 6th. And again, this is all a big question of if. Lots of ifs here. But theoretically speaking, depending on how much Kevin Feige has interconnected these things and one relies on the next to flow into a certain order, then this whole corona delay could cause a massive cascading domino effect that reaches beyond 2021 into 2022. Now, we're still going to get all these shows and movies. We're still going to get, Thor, Love and Thunder. We're still going to get Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. We're still going to get them. It's just that their scheduling may become an absolute chaotic nightmare that may get pushed a lot. Or maybe very little at all. But the possibility is there, Jesse. So yeah, we're joking about Wanda and Doctor Strange talking over Skype, but there really could be a lot of heavy ramifications moving forward. So I just thought it was interesting for us to take a step back and take a look at. But you know what? Kevin Feige is a smart guy. He's got an incredibly rich brain trust of people surrounding him. They'll figure it out. The important thing here is that we're going to get all this stuff. It's just a matter of when and how much does the schedule get thrown out of loop. All right, let's move on here. Star Wars Rocks writes, one of two. Hi, John and crew. Weekly cartoon recommendation, Tenkai Knights, which is about a team of 4 teenagers whose lives are changed when they are chosen to be the successors of the previous Tenkai Knights. Sounds like Power Rangers a little bit. Anyway, and Moncart, which you can find on Netflix. Where's 2 of 2? There it is. It's about a kid who's trying to become a Moncart Knight, and overthrow the knight that might have killed his father, Kite, the legendary knight. Say that 10 times fast. Kite, the legendary knight. There's only one season. You might end up liking it, so please check it out. I always love when people send in these random these random recommendations. The first one sounds a little bit too much like Power Rangers to me. This one sounds interesting. Whenever you got a thing of "you killed my father, prepare to die" as a part of your overall story or narrative path, you've got my attention. You got my attention on that part. Okay. Let's move on here. Next one. Cody Cordy writes, "Hey, John, two things. One, I watch at home and the movie Brothers, it's really good. Oh, and the movie Brothers, it's really good. And two, there's this movie on Netflix that I want to watch called Enemy, but I heard it's pretty creepy in some parts. Apparently, you've seen it. Is it any good? Thanks." Hold a second. Let me try to remind myself which one is Enemy. I mean, because I'm thinking of Enemy at the Gates. Then there's a Denis Villeneuve one called Enemy. And then I think there's a few other enemies as well. Let me just make sure I know what I'm talking about. Okay. If you are talking about the 2013 Enemy, and there are a few ones in there. So it's got Maggie Gyllenhaal, Jake Gyllenhaal, Maggie Gyllenhaal's brother. It's got Jake Gyllenhaal. Directed by Denis Villeneuve. I honestly don't think one of his best films. Denis Villeneuve is a lot like Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan has his stronger movies and he has his weaker films. But even Christopher Nolan's weaker films are still good. Enemy to me might be my least favorite Denis Villeneuve film. That doesn't mean though I'm saying it's not good. It is good if I'm remembering it correctly. But not the best example of, Denis Villeneuve at the height of his powers or really doing his thing. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a doppelganger kind of situation. Anyway, I would recommend if you haven't seen movies like, say, Prisoners or Arrival or things like that, or Blade Runner 2049, I would say don't watch Enemy until you've watched those other films first, because I don't want anybody to get a misconception about just exactly how good he is as a director. Because to me, again, while it's a decent film, it's not one of his best, in my opinion, at any rate. So, and again, if I'm thinking of the wrong movie, completely forgive me. Completely forgive me if I'm thinking of the wrong movie. Okay, anyway, let's see here. Stubble McShave writes, did I miss somebody? No. Stubble McShave writes, since a lot of heavy effects movies can't start production for a while, do you think some of them will use the stagecraft tech to move a lot of their post-production to pre-production and save time in their overall production timeline? The problem with that is even the stagecraft stuff, which is something that Mandalorian used a lot heavily, it requires teams of people. So what you'd just be doing is exchanging one team of people needed to do something in exchange for another team of people in being able to do something. And that faces no fewer struggles under the current circumstances than, say, post-production does. So, and remember, the thing about stagecraft is that it only answers certain problems, right? Stagecraft actually doesn't help a lot of what visual effects do. It's confined to a very finite area of visual effects, particularly settings and whatnot. But again, I don't know that would be a solution right now. You're trying to think outside of the box here, Stubble, and that's good. I just don't know that would actually address the problem that they're facing right now. But who knows? We'll find out. Star Wars Rocks also writes, "Hi, John. We had a really large-scale battle at the end of Deathly Hallows Part 2. So isn't that kind of yesterday's news?" I don't think so, because, listen, when I think of something on the level of Portals or something on the level of a Braveheart or things like that, what he's referring to is yesterday we talked about how Dan Fogel was talking about how what we've got coming in Fantastic Beasts is like war. We're going to have this epic war of wizards with World War II as the background, right? And they asked, do you think it can compare to Portals? The battle in Deathly Hallows Part 2 is certainly grand in scale compared to the scale of all the other stuff we had in all the other Harry Potter movies. But I don't put it on the scale of like Braveheart or the scale of pardon me again, of portals or things like that. So I don't think it's old news at all. I think this would be taking it to a completely different level, theoretically speaking, than what we've had so far. And by the way, I love Deathly Hallows Part 2. That is my favorite of the Harry Potter films, and I really love the epic battle at the end, but it's not an epic battle on the same kind of scale that a lot of these other things are. And I get the feeling that it's that kind of scale that Dan Fogel is talking about. We don't know for sure, and we won't know for sure until we see it. But yeah, I see it as a completely different thing, actually. But there we go. Or Jason Boyd is in the live chat saying, or the Lord of the Rings battles. That's a great example. Lord of the Rings battles. That's just a different level of scale than the ones that say we got in Deathly Hallows Part 2. Okay, let's see here. Imagine Studios writes in, are you or Rob a Legend of Zelda fan? I can't speak for Rob, but I am. I mean, I've played a lot of Zelda. I even got Breath of the Wild on the Nintendo Switch there. Let me rephrase. I'm not defined as I'm a massive Zelda fan. No, but I've played a lot of Zelda. Lord Vanderkill writes, we all could use one more season of Game of Thrones right now. Oh, God, you're not kidding. We're going to be running out of stuff to watch right pretty soon. Another season of Game of Thrones would be absolutely very, very welcome right now. Unfortunately, Lord Vanderkill, we're probably not about to get one. All right. Double Crit writes, how do you decide off the top versus a main topic? That's a good question. Now, for those of you who watch the John Campea Show, again, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, watch live or watch afterwards. It's all good. You'll know that we always have our main topics, but we usually start off with, we have 1, 2, or 3 off the tops, right? Good question. I don't think I've ever explained what the difference is. So here's what happens. Around 5 or 6 at night, it depends on the season, is when I start getting all my show notes together for the next day, right? I go through all the viewer emails that get sent in. When you go to John at the John Campea, I'll just bring this up here right now. Just for you guys who want to know, if you have a topic or question you want to hear discussed on the John Campea Show, and you don't want to use like Super Chat or whatever, you can go anytime. It's totally free. You can go over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact, and there's a form where you fill out with your question or topic, and then you hit submit. It's totally free. And then that comes into me, and then that's where I pick out, that's how I pick out the main topics for the John Campea Show the next day. Now, the catch is that I get between 1 and 200 of those a day. So, and I'm only able to pick 4 or 5 of those. So there's a good chance your submission won't be picked, but we do pick 4 or 5 of them every day. So there's a chance it gets put in. So that's the main topics. So why don't those off the tops qualify as a main topic? That's a good question, because here's what the off the tops are. The off the tops are, our show goes live at 9 a.m., right? So I'm up much earlier than that. And then about 7 a.m., I start going through any new news. Because when it's 7 a.m. here, it's actually 10 a.m. on the East Coast. So all the news sites are up and running on the East Coast by then. So sometimes news stories drop in the morning before the John Campea Show starts. Or sometimes I'll come across a story that might have been from yesterday, but that might have flown under my radar the night before when I was putting the show notes together. So the off-the-top topics are things that came up after the main show notes were done. And I still think they're worth at least discussing a little bit on the show, and we bring them in and we make them off the tops. And so we discuss those ones off the tops, and you'll notice in those off the tops, we don't have as much graphics for them. Like we don't have any of Ray's graphics prepared for them or any stuff like that. And we don't have time to prepare what we're going to talk about with those topics. We just kind of fly off the cuff and discuss them because they came up last second. So that's what off the tops are versus our main topics. Good question. I hope that clarified that a little bit. All right. Michelle Alexandria writes, just sends in a super chat to be supportive. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate that. Dirk Walker writes, I read that while Chinese theaters were open, attendance was super low. This worries me that global audiences might be slow to return. There's definitely going to be an effect, but you also have to keep this in mind. When Chinese theaters reopened, a lot of people read those headlines and thought, all the movie theaters in China are open. Actually, it was, I believe, Deadline wrote it that it was like 4.6% of the theaters reopened in China. 4.6%. And I believe none of them were of their most major chains. So it was mostly smaller theaters, if the reports I was reading, like the Hollywood Reporter and Deadline, are accurate. So it was a few hundred theaters that opened up that represented about 4.6, maybe if I could talk today, 4.6% of their theaters, and none of them were the major chains. And remember, again, they were opening with second-run movies. So they opened again, but with like old Avengers movies and Avatar and some older Chinese blockbusters, right? So you got to keep it all in mind. It's not like all the theaters across China were like, we're now open for business, right? It wasn't that. It was a much slower rollout. Couple hundred theaters, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8%, whatever the number was, and I might not be remembering correctly here. And none of them were new movies either. I think if they open up, if they set like, I don't know, May 10th, I'm just pulling a number out of my ass, guys, here. May 10th, nationwide theaters reopen. I think you'll see a much better response than what China had. But it was a very unique set of circumstances. So that's something to keep in mind, Dirk. But who knows? I mean, maybe it'll be even worse. We don't know. All right. Francisco C. writes, once again, the Snyder Cut. This will go on for, I know, right? But as soon as those headlines started coming in about Wendy's put out that tweet about the Snyder Cut, then I got a flood of those, submissions at the johncampeshow.com/contact. A ton of them came in regarding the Snyder Cut. That's why we made it a topic of the day. But also, again, I think you guys know what my position on this has always been. A fully done theatrical ready release of Snyder Cut does not exist. There is a cut of the film that Snyder has clearly assembled together. It's clearly there, and maybe he's even further along than what a lot of people think, but it's not a complete, and he even acknowledged that, right? A few months ago, he acknowledged, he goes, well, listen, all the creative decisions are done, which is really the most part. Okay, but that's not a theatrically ready to release film, at any rate. Under the current circumstances, and remember, this whole coronavirus lockdown thing, it creates scenarios that we've never faced before. And I just personally feel, as sick and tired as I am of the whole Snyder Cut nonsense, I honestly think, you know what? Why the hell not put it out? Just don't finish it. Warner Brothers is never going to drop another $20 million to finish it because nobody cares. But take what he's got. Jason Momoa went over to his house and he showed Jason Momoa what he had. Just take that. Put it on HBO. Why not? Now, before I would have said, hey, that'll just damage the DCEU because it just create more division and blah, blah. But you know what? The Justice League was 2.5 years ago. The DCEU today is now moving in a different direction than it was at the time. And you know what? Everybody could just really use a pick-me-up right now. So if there are a bunch of people out there who have been clamoring to see a Snyder Cut, I was like everybody else saying, just who cares? Just bury it. It's never going to see the light of day, blah, blah, blah. But under these circumstances, why not give some people some joy? Why not? I don't care. I'd be lying if I said if I wasn't at least a little curious to see what it is. Of course I am, like everybody else, but ultimately I don't care. But there are a lot of people who do. Why not give them a gift? Why not? What's the harm? Because, listen, everybody's living under some pretty shitty conditions right now. Between, people like first world idiot problems like mine. It's like, oh, Google Calendar's reminding me that Ann and I were supposed to leave for our vacation. Now we can't. But you got a lot of people who haven't been able to work in weeks. You've got people who haven't seen their own families in a while. You got people who have been sequestering themselves at their own home for weeks, maybe even haven't left. We've got a lot of people living under a lot of shitty conditions. Well, under situations like this, if you're a studio like Warner Brothers and you've got the power to, with no added expense, to just release something that would give some people some joy in really miserable times like this, why not? Why not? If it wasn't for the coronavirus thing, I'd say, yeah, just forget it, move past it. But, everybody could use a smile on their face right now. And if there's a bunch of people right now, I feel, who have been really wanting to see that Snyder Cut and they've been holding out hope against hope, well, give it to them. I just don't, in these situations and in this particular set of circumstances, I don't see why not. Give it to them. Spread a little bit of joy around. Give some people a little something, even something as silly as this. Give everybody a little something to feel a little bit of excitement about. Why not? Anyway, that's just my thought on that. But anyway, there we go. Everybody's so sick of that, including me. All right, Lord Vanderkill writes, movie suggestion, Pirate Radio is really good. And the cast is amazing. It actually literally takes place on a boat. Hold on a second. Let me just bring up so it's one of the last films I saw of Philip Seymour Hoffman. So hold on a second. Let me just bring up the, waiting for the IMDb page to open here. Okay, it was directed by Richard Curtis. Listen to this cast. Lucy Fleming, who I love, Charlie Rowe, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Bill Nighy, who I love, Tom Brooke, who I really, really like, Chris O'Dowd, who is amazing. It's a really, really sharp, let me bring up just so you guys know the movie I'm talking about here. It's a really, really sharp little film. I did not think it nearly got the love it deserved. I think it's about 11 years old now. Yeah, 2009. 11 years old now. I think that's a nice little recommendation, actually. I like that one. Well planted, Lord Vanderkill. All right, next one up. DJ Titus writes, speaking of dog stepfather, I recommend The Stepfather. Okay, not bad recommendation. So what's DJ talking about? So the other day on the John Campea Show, you know, Rob and I do movie recommendations every day, things to watch while we're stuck at home. I had Mark Ellis come on and do a little guest spot to give his movie recommendations. And by the way, if you have not seen Mark Ellis's comedy special, Dog Stepfather, it's free. You can go watch it right now. You can find it on YouTube even. And it's really good and it's really hilarious. And go check it out. All right, Boston McLeod writes, hey, John and gang. I want to say that I went to Disneyland a few weeks back with some friends and rode the new Star Wars ride. So did we, actually, and loved it. The only bad thing was it broke down before we got on and we were in line for 2.5 hours worth the wait. Well, listen, I know people who were like literally got there at 9. This is before Disneyland closed down, but literally got there like 7 in the morning before this parks opened and didn't get on till like 9:30 at night. And my buddy Sol was in the same situation. He went and literally the ride broke down like 3 or 4 times in the day, and he ended up spending hours in line before he was able to get on. But I concur, Boston. The Rise of Resistance ride at Disneyland is the most immersive ride. I'm not saying it's the best ride of all time, but I'm saying it's the most immersive ride. You feel like you are in Star Wars when you're on that ride. It's really fantastic, and I agree, Boston. It's worth the wait. All right. Mel Brown writes, where are we at here? Mel Brown writes, I heard a while back about the cult classic Big Trouble in Little China being turned into a remake/sequel. I always desired them to combine universes with another IP. The Last Dragon could have worked. I don't think so. I honestly think this whole let's cross over universes thing is I think it was a cheap gimmick, and it works in a couple of places, but I don't think a lot. Honestly, I just think about the mess that Freddy versus Jason was. I just think about the mess that movie would have been better if it was Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, which is what they tried to make it for a while, but never actually turned out. They were trying to get a remake done. Like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was supposed to do a remake of Big Trouble in Little China for the longest time, and then like several other Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson projects that just kind of fell away. Like that. There were a couple that he was going to do that I was looking forward to. That he was going to do a Doc Savage one for a long time, and then that one just kind of disappeared, and little things like that. But no, I personally, Mel, and I'm only speaking for myself because I'm sure there are a lot of film fans who would totally be excited about this. I'm just not one of them. The idea of taking Big Trouble and crossing it over with another movie universe, I don't think works. I like Big Trouble as it is. So either just keep the original or do a reboot and take another shot at it. But I don't see it crossing over with another one. But that's just me. Okay. Next up, Dodger Ryan 124 writes, my 5 recommended films of the week. 5 for Love or Money with Michael J. Fox. That's actually a good one. I haven't seen that one in ages. The Dream Team with Michael Keaton. That's actually a really good one too. The Dream Team is one I have not thought of in a long, long time. If you're looking for a good Michael Keaton movie, that's one to check out. It's an older one. 3, Meteor Man, which we actually talked about the other day. 2, Crocodile Dundee. That's not a knife. That's a knife. And number 1, The Wizard. My wife loves The Wizard. And it's so funny when it pops on and you're watching the games from the time Totally different. Dude, that's some deep cut recommendations right there, Dodger Ryan. I like it. Well done. I like that list. Okay. Attic Hatch Sound writes, new title for Rob, Destroyer of Campea's Dreams. I'm not sure why that is. Rob is always a dream bringer. What are you talking about? He's never destroyed my dreams. He's a dream bringer, Robert Meyer Burnett. Anyway, James writes, John, what are your thoughts on Netflix's Tiger King? Some of the memes from the show are epic. I'll tell you what. Corey was over here the other night, as Corey's over here every day. She sits at home, which is literally 1 block from us. She sits at home, and then she comes over so her and Ann can work out together. They exercise together. And then she'll just hang out here for the day, and we'll have dinner, play video games, or watch movies, whatever. So she was over the other night, and we're like, oh, everybody's talking about this Tiger King. We should watch this Tiger King. So we sat down to watch it. Everybody's losing their minds for it. And I have to get up at like 5, okay? So it was about 9:30, 10 o'clock, and we're about half hour into it, and I'm like, I gotta go to bed. If the movie was really interesting to me, I would have stayed awake. But I don't know. I was watching this like, okay, this what's it, Johnny Exotic or whatever his name is. I thought this is a really weird cat, and it's cool to see, no pun intended. But yeah, I didn't feel like it was engaging me enough to stay awake, so I went to bed. Woke up the next morning, I asked Ann, I said, so how did you and Corey like the rest of Tiger King? She goes, we watched it for about another 10 minutes, and then we just watched The Office instead. So I don't know. You know what? Because so many people love it, I'm going to have to give it another shot. Because I'm kind of obsessed with documentaries right now because I'm making a documentary at the moment. And man, I've been watching a lot of really good documentaries lately. Anyway, all that pisses me off because they're all so much better than mine's going to be. Anyway, so I'll have to give Tiger King another shot. I'll have to, because everybody's talking about it. Anyway, Brian Williams writes, or just sends in a super chat to be supportive. Thank you, Brian. We appreciate that, man. All right. Next up, Mika Mahe writes, hello from France. Oh, hello, bonjour. Je m'appelle Jean. Comment t'appelles-tu? Top 5 movie I love to rewatch. Number 5, Akira, the animated classic. Number 4, Le Grand Vadrouille. I'm not sure about that. 1966 comedy who was the number 1 box office in France until Titanic in 1998. That's some good trivia right there. There it is. You could put that on a movie trivia schmodown and no one's going to get that. What was the number 1 box office film in France prior to the release of Titanic in 1998? No one will ever get it. And if anybody ever does, they're a god at that. I don't even think Dan Merle's getting that one. Anyway, Lord of the Rings, number 2, The Professional or Leon the Professional. Number 1, Godfather, Guilty Pleasure, Slevin, and V for Vendetta. If you're you talking lucky number Slevin? If that's the one, I gotta admit, I didn't love that one very much. But V for Vendetta, V for Vendetta isn't a guilty pleasure. That's just a solid movie, dude. That's just a solid movie. Anyway, thank you for the little, the interesting trivia in there. That's actually really cool. Let me see if I can get the name of this again. Because this is seriously a great movie trivia question. What was the number 1 box office film of all time in France prior to Titanic in 1998? The answer? Well, I'll say buzz in. Yes, the answer is Le Grand Vadrouille. Well, it's spelled like ratatouille. So it's Vadrouille? Is it Vadrouille? Le Grand Vadrouille? I'm probably completely butchering this. John, you come from a country where French is one of the official languages. I know, but I'm just butchering that. But that's a good one to know. I'm going to have to file that one away. Thank you so much for that one. All right, Ryan Lohner writes, binging recommendation. Amazon Prime's Good Omens, written by the author of Stardust, indeed it is, an angel and a demon, played by Michael Sheen, and I'm forgetting the name of the dude who plays the demon. An angel and a demon who team up to stop the end of the world when the Antichrist goes missing, with Michael Sheen, David Tennant, thank you, Frances McDormand, and Michael McKean. It's a really sharp little show. It's a sharp little show. I'm going to admit, I didn't love it as much as some people. Like, some of my friends just thought it's like, oh my God, this is like The Wire. This is like the next great show on television. I didn't like it that much, but I really did enjoy it. If you guys have not checked out Good Omens yet, take Ryan's advice here. Give it a shot. Watch the first 2 episodes. You'll know pretty quick if the show is for you or not, but give the first 2 episodes a shot, and I think a lot of you are going to be pretty charmed by it. All right, good recommendation, Ryan. All right, Timbula the Spider Monkey writes, if you had to pick one of these actors' movies to recommend to people who haven't seen them, which would it be? Okay, if you had to pick one of these actors and their movies to recommend to people who haven't seen them, like any of their movies, all right, which would it be? Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, or Jet Li? I love the other 2, but I'd go Jackie. His films are so varied, from serious action to slapstick comedy. You know what? As sacrilegious as it sounds, from strictly a movie point of view, I think I have to agree with you. I think I'm going Jackie Chan as well. Yeah, I mean, it feels sacrilegious, and I love Jet Li. Don't get me wrong, I love Jet Li, but it feels sacrilegious not to say Bruce Lee. But honestly, if we're talking strictly from movie point of view, I mean, when you're talking Drunken Master and the cop police story and things, Jackie just has a wider, more diverse filmography. I think I'm going to have to go with you on that one, Timbula. I'm going to go Jackie Chan. An anonymous viewer writes in, hey, John, thank you for all the great work you're doing. Oh, thanks so much. I appreciate that. I wish if you can add some reviews to your show for 2 or 3 weekly popular shows, either new shows like Plot Against America, Devs, Picard, or ongoing shows like Better Call Saul or Westworld. You know, I have done those on my show before. You know, we do Game of Thrones weekly. We did Mandalorian weekly, all that kind of stuff. Here's my dilemma. My dilemma right now, and you will see those return to my channel. You will see me do weekly, like pick a couple of TV shows and do weekly, discussions of those shows. It'll happen. The dilemma I face right now is this, is that just doing the John Campea Show is a full-time job. Like I've broken down before, like all the hours of the day. This is what goes into making an episode of the John Campea Show. And it's a full-time job. On top of all that, I am trying to make my documentary. And even though we're not shooting interviews right now, we've already started the post-production process, which is so massive. It's so massive to try to do, even on a simple little dumb thing like mine. And so right now, I just don't have the time, unfortunately. But you bet your ass, if they dropped Falcon and Winter Soldier tomorrow, yeah, I'd be doing a week-by-week breakdown of Falcon and Winter Soldier. If, Mandalorian Season 2 was coming out next week, I would be doing Mandalorian Season. I would figure out a way to do it. But there are other shows I'd like to do, but I just don't have the time right now, unfortunately. So once I get the documentary done, and in my rearview mirror, and it's complete, then I can start looking at doing some more stuff like that on the channel. I definitely will. It's just, now's not the best time for me, unfortunately. But thank you for asking that. I appreciate that. James Durden writes, hey, John, with so many studios trying to get into streaming, do you think there are too many different services, or is there enough money to go around, assuming they all have content people want? Can so many different streaming services all survive? I don't think so. I don't think they can all survive. Here's what I've said before, and I still kind of think this. Although we're in a totally new era, we are at the very beginnings of the streaming era, right? So this will change a lot. Like the rules are kind of being developed as we go right now. So some of the things I think right now may look completely different a year from now, right? But here's kind of how I feel. Streaming is the next evolution of television entertainment. So everybody right now is jumping on the streaming bandwagon, understandably so. Netflix with Peacock, or Netflix, NBC Universal with Peacock, HBO, HBO Max, Disney Plus, Amazon, Hulu, and there's more. There's like 20 I'm not even mentioning here. Epic, Stars, blah, blah. There's ESPN. There's so many streaming channels, and there's only more coming. I don't believe the market can sustain that. because I'm already looking, and I'm sure a lot of you guys will agree with this. I'm already looking at my monthly bills, right? I'm looking at my monthly bills, and all the services I pay for now is pretty much equal to the stupid amount of money I used to pay just for my cable bill, if not more. See, the age of streaming, we always thought, it's going to be great. We're going to pay like $10 a month and we're going to get all the content we want. And it's going to be different from cable. But the problem is now that it's so segmented and you got so many of these networks that have so much good content. Look at all the great content on HBO. Look at all the great content on Amazon Prime. Look at all the great content that's on Netflix. Look at all the great content that's on Hulu. Look at all the great content that's coming to HBO Max. NBC Universal is going to have their Peacock thing, as stupid as the name of it is. They're going to have some awesome stuff. Apple Plus has some great content. I mean, so we're all now paying $7, $10, $12, $18 a month for like 10 different things, and all of a sudden we're spending more than we ever were on cable, and more of these services are coming. At some point, whether it's in 3 years, 5 years, there's going to be, I believe, a systemic shift in the streaming landscape. What that shift will be, I'm not sure. Whether it's going to be, packages where, hey, HBO and Googie, the streaming service, and Peacock are now all one thing, and they're going to consolidate. Or I'm not saying consolidation is what that systemic shift is going to be, but something's going to happen in 3 to 5 years that makes streaming more viable again, because the direction it's going, I don't believe is sustainable. We're already seeing people, you and I already know people that are making choices. You know what? No, I don't have Stars. Stars is some great stuff, but I don't have it because I'm already paying for all this other stuff. HBO Max looks amazing, but I can't. I'm already paying for my Hulu. I'm paying for Disney Plus. I'm paying for Netflix. I've only got so much money every month I can put towards my TV watching. It's getting unreasonable. It's not sustainable. But again, we're just in that initial growth period. And there's going to be a ton of growth, and everybody's going to figure out how this all really works, because none of us know yet. And then in a couple of years, you're going to see a massive shift. What that shift will look like and what's going to be needed, we don't know yet. But I think just going on the current course we're on, the trajectory we're on, I don't think long-term is sustainable. So we'll see how that all kind of turns out. But hell, what do I know? All right, David B. writes, are we at David B? Yes. John, lately seems Moulin Rouge has been mentioned quite a bit. It has, and that's always a good thing. I love Moulin Rouge. I'm tired of everyone not using its correct name. Obi-Wan sings. Keep up the wonderful work. Seriously, if you never knew Ewan McGregor could sing. He can sing. Actually, my favorite part of Moulin Rouge, which is in my top 20 all-time favorite movies, my favorite scene in Moulin Rouge is your song. And you can tell everybody this is your song, right? That Ewan McGregor sings. And it's my favorite part of the movie. And it's great and it's unbelievable. And I'm watching this, like, okay, Ewan McGregor is clearly not a top 40 level professional singer, but oh my God, he can sing. He can sing. So I don't think you're wrong calling it Obi-Wan. And by the way, Nicole Kidman is awesome. Everybody's awesome in this movie. There's this great number in it that uses the Police's Roxanne. Roxanne! The way they do it in the movie. It's so good. Oh, it's so good. I love that movie. Love that movie, David. All right, Sam O'Neill writes, currently watching The Rewrite with Hugh Grant and Marissa Tomei. Highly recommended to anyone who loves rom-coms. I put money on Hugh Grant to be the #1 rom-com actor, followed closely by Matthew McConaughey. Listen, a lot of people forget that Hugh Grant, hold on, let me bring this up. That Hugh Grant was on a course. Why can't I get this? Come on, let me try that again. Was on pace and on course to be like one of the most top A-list especially when it comes to romantic comedy guys in the business. Let me just go. 4 Weddings and a Funeral. He's so freaking good in that. He did stuff like Sense and Sensibility, Extreme Measures. It wasn't the best movie, but then he did Notting Hill, right? Things like that. I thought he was really good in About a Boy. But anyway, he had then been relegated to not a C or D list level, but he kind of got then relegated to B list level, which is still fine. You can still have a career doing B list, a very good career. And he's great. I love him in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I love him in The Gentleman. He's awesome in The Gentleman, by the way. He's awesome in The Gentleman. But, oh, by the way, and he was the villain in Paddington 2. He was great in that. But anyway, so he's maintained a good career, but he was on trajectory to be like the guy. Just like Julia Roberts for a number of years was the girl. Hugh Grant was on a trajectory to be the guy. Good looking, charming, great comedic timing, all that kind of stuff. And then it happened. He was married to man or woman, one of the most beautiful creatures to ever walk the face of the earth, Elizabeth Hurley. And it was a big paparazzi expose thing where he got busted with paid company. Let's call it that. Paid company. And one of the greatest moments, and then he lost his marriage and all that kind of stuff. And that hurt his career and hurt the perception of his career. And I remember one of the greatest moments in late night talk show history. One of the greatest moments in late night talk show history. I believe he was on Jay Leno. I believe it was Jay Leno, right? So he's like, okay, he's got this was just after the incident. And here he is, married to this movie star, supermodel, most gorgeous, beautiful woman in the world, and mess it up. Jay Leno's like, ladies and gentlemen, Hugh Grant. Hugh Grant comes out. And this is one of the greatest moments in late night talk show history. And it won't sound all that great the way I say it, but you have to watch it. If you can look it up on YouTube, you have to watch it. So Hugh Grant comes walking out, sits down in the chair, and the applause dies down. And the very first thing Jay Leno says, is, "What the hell were you thinking?" I mean, that's the very first thing he says. And that, I was a child when that happened. That has stuck with me forever. Comes out, it's just, the very first thing is not, hey, it's good to have you here. No, the very first thing out of his mouth, "What the hell were you thinking?" Which is what everybody was thinking. Dude, you were married to Elizabeth Hurley. And I remember that is what everybody was thinking. Everybody was thinking that. Dude, what the hell were you thinking? I mean, it's the only thing that comes to mind. What were you thinking? Greatest moment ever, dude. But yeah, that then upended his career. The thing is, he's so good that he survived it, right? He survived it. Now, Meg Ryan. You look at somebody like Meg Ryan, who, she was the it girl for a long time. She was America's sweetheart, and she was married to Dennis. What was her? Why am I forgetting Dennis's name? Her actor husband. This is gonna kill me now. Hold on a second. Meg Ryan, Dennis Quaid. She was married to Dennis Quaid. I don't know why I was freezing on Quaid's name. And then she did that movie with Russell Crowe. And then all the stories came out that she had an affair on Dennis Quaid. And guess what? People love Dennis Quaid. People love Dennis Quaid. And she was like, she had this image of, America's sweetheart, America's girl next door, and blah, blah, blah. And, then apparently there's thing about, she did this movie with Russell Crowe, apparently started having an affair with Russell Crowe. I don't know all the sordid details because I don't normally care about shit like this. But when her whole career was based on that America's sweetheart, girl next door persona, look, who somebody sleeps with should be none of our effing business. Can we just be clear about that? who somebody decides to have sex with is none of our effing business. I don't care. But when your whole image is built on being America's sweetheart and the girl next door, something like that had a profound effect on her career. And she did more stuff after that, but she was never really able to recover from that. Hugh Grant, on the other hand, he was able to maintain a very solid career. Never that A-list trajectory like he had. But he was able to maintain a pretty solid career after that. And again, him in The Gentleman. Dude, listen, it is my favorite movie. I don't know how many different ways I can express that you've got to watch The Gentleman. You've got to watch The Gentleman. It's absolutely my favorite movie of the year, and all that kind of stuff. So yes, absolutely watch The Gentleman. And if for no other reason than to see Hugh Grant in it, because Hugh Grant is pretty spectacular. All right, we move on here. Next one up. Russell Amador writes, "Hey, John, talk about making the most out of what Netflix has to offer. This past week, I watched The Occupant, Platform, which I still haven't seen, and The Tiger King with Joe Exotic." I was calling him Johnny Exotic. Joe Exotic. That dude is something else. These are some movies and series that I enjoyed over this past weekend. Listen, it's again, one of the great things about the streaming world we live in right now. One of the great things one of the great things about the streaming world right now is the fact that we have so much stuff. Like, if this quarantine stuff was happening, like back when I was in school or whatever, you'd have like the 13 channels. Well, it was more than 13, but you would have a limited amount of channels and a limited amount of content and whatever you had in your VHS collection to keep you busy, right? The good thing, again, this is trying to look positively on it. The good thing is today we've got all these streaming services we were just talking about. We got our video games, we got Steam, we got our PS4s, we got our Nintendo Switches, we got whatever it is. You got Stadia or NVIDIA, whatever NVIDIA's gaming platform is called now. Blah. We got a lot to help keep us occupied. And if you can use that time, Russell, get caught up on some classics or some currently new big things that you can get caught up on, Russell, that's making lemonade out of lemons. Good on you. Because that's what we all got to do right now. Is there's no getting around it. The situation sucks. What can we do to make the best of it? What can we do to make the best of it? You're doing some good things to make the best of it. Or we can watch the John Campea Show. Someone's going to make a gif out of that. Okay, Jetfire97 writes, 4-4. I missed the other one. 4-4. What? I don't get it. I'll try to read these in order because there's missing a 2 of 4, but okay. 1 of 4, Jetfire writes, "Hey, John, I recently watched Iron Man 3 again and just love it. One of my top 10 favorite movies overall. Number 1 MCU movie, of course. It had goofy moments like Mandarin, but there were deeper lessons also. Tony's handling with PTSD, creating demons with Killian, which could have been avoided. The realization that tech won't always be there when you need it, and you have to use your brain and improvise. He learned if you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it. It also distractions, which were his suits, which nearly ruined his love life and priorities." Listen, Iron Man 3 is an interesting case study in putting a lot of great things in a movie that don't necessarily equal the movie being an overall great package. But there are people who just love the film overall as it is, Jetfire, like yourself, and that's great. There are certain elements of Iron Man 3 that I think are spectacular. The whole examination of PTSD. Look, you don't get to be a regular human man, go through the events of the Avengers, seeing an alien race invading Earth, go through a portal into the depths of space, and seeing the end of mankind coming and not have it affect you. And one of the things I loved about Iron Man 3 was the fact that, guess what? There were ramifications. There were ramifications for Tony experiencing that. There were ramifications and of having a regular human mind and brain, of seeing experiences like that. Also, I did like the fact that They tried to show it that Tony was more than the armor. I feel like that's what they were going for. That Tony Stark was more than the Iron Man armor. And that's what they were going for. I like the fact, I love the relationship with the kid. The kid who, by the way, was at the funeral at the end of Endgame, except that nobody recognized him, right? Everyone's like, who's that kid? It's the kid from Iron Man 3. Anyway. And I like the whole twist with Sir Ben Kingsley. Now, that pissed a lot of people off because, hey, you told us we were getting Mandarin and we didn't get Mandarin. I honestly do understand why that bothered a lot of people, but I think in and of itself, there was something really cool about it. Still, with all that great stuff in it, for me, it is still a movie that didn't quite live up to its potential. I don't know the better way to say it. It's still, for me, not a bad movie, but a movie that's in the lower level of the MCU. But again, because of all those great things that are in it, there are people like yourself, Jetfire, who look at it and go, this movie's amazing. And I can totally see why. For me, it was the parts were greater than the sum of the whole. What you really want is a movie where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. But to me, Iron Man 3 was the parts were greater than the sum of its whole. And that's not the way it should be. Again, it's a movie I enjoyed. I enjoy Iron Man 3. But it's still a lower level tier, but absolutely they went for some higher concept stuff in the movie. But again, it all comes down to execution, but I will always take my hat off to them for going for some higher concept stuff. They really did. All right. Luke1234 writes, from your computer, software, lighting, mics, etc., what is the cost of operating the John Campea Show? Well, but you got to understand, my personal finances is not anybody's business. But I understand why you're asking the question. So let me answer what I can. You got to understand that if you go through my studio here and you add up everything that I've got in here, the number gets pretty high. But you have to understand that it's not like one day I just woke up and said, oh, I'm going to go spend this amount of money and buy everything that I now have in my studio. Like, there are things in this studio that I've had for a very long time. For example, let me go to my little behind the scenes cam. Let me see if I can get this camera turned on for you here. All right, here we go. Hello, everybody. Let me try that again. Hello, everybody. Now we're in our behind the scenes camera. Okay, so for example, this monitor. This is a monitor I've had for 3 or 4 years. Right? I've had this monitor forever. This monitor I've had for even longer. This monitor, I kid you not, I've probably had this monitor for like 7 years or something like that. Now this, my main monitor, this is a 34-inch or 32-inch computer monitor. I've had this for about, I'm going on 4 years now. No, 3 years. I've had this for about 3 years, this monitor here. This laptop is relatively new. This is the laptop I use to bring in my Skype guests. So when Rob is coming in via Skype, he comes in on this computer and I combine it into this. My computer, which is down there lighting up there, that I got about maybe a year ago. I needed an upgrade to my computer because it was everything I was doing just was maxing out. That light, this ring light, see that ring light right here? I've had that for a while. But like these lights are new. These new lights are new. I just got these recently. These cameras, well, that camera down there, that is a Canon XC15. I've had that for about 2 years now. The mics, the Rode Procasters, I got these relatively recently, so these are some new additions. Within the last 6 months, I upgraded my main cameras, that camera and that camera there. These are Sony A6400 cameras with Sigma Prime 30, no, not 30, is it 30 millimeter lenses? Yeah, Sigma Prime 30 millimeter lenses. These are relatively new additions. This slider here, you see that this camera, because you know I've got the moving shot, the camera moves back and forth when it's wide on me. That slider, that's a relatively new purchase. I've used, and we can move away from that. I've used Wirecast for a long time, but that's an annual cost I have to pay. So the bottom line here is that when you do sit down and add it all up, it's expensive. There's a lot of money has gone into this show and continues to go into this show. I'm always looking for ways to take the money that people support the channel with and try to then translate that money into making a better viewing experience for everybody at home. Because you support the show, I'm going to use the money you send in to try to make as good of a show as I'm capable of doing, however limited my capabilities are. And so that includes new sound gear, new switching boards, blah, blah, blah. And so I'm always adding to it. Little bit by little bit, I'm always adding to it. Now, on top of all that, there's the expense of the people. I pay people to appear on this show. I don't expect people to work for free. So like when you see Robert Meyer Burnett on the show, I'm paying him to appear on the show. Now, Robert would do it for free because he's that kind of a guy, but I said, hey, if you're going to do work, you should be compensated and paid for your work. So he appears on this show, bringing his expertise and value to my viewers. I believe Robert Meyer Burnett brings value and brings good stuff and entertainment and information to my viewers. He deserves to be compensated for that. So I pay him. I obviously, Ray and Jonathan, this is their main jobs working with me. So I pay their salaries. When you see Chris Carr or an Aaron Cummings appear on the show, I pay them. I didn't pay Mark Ellis because fuck that guy. No, but I should have. I should have given him for his guest appearance because I always pay people for guest appearances. But anyway. And then of my own salary, I got to pay myself. I got to pay the bills and all that kind of stuff. So it adds up. But the great thing about the YouTube era is when I started, I didn't need a lot of money to do what I was doing when I started. For you to start, see, I don't want anybody to have the perception that to get started, you have to have all this money and you have to have all this stuff and you got to have all this expertise in running this software and know how to do sound engineering. You need to have all this expertise and all this money to get started. You don't. You know what you need? I'll tell you what you need. You need this little guy. This is a great webcam. This is a great webcam. Actually, let me cut to this webcam again here. I'll just do it with this shot. This webcam is like $65. Let me bring it up here again. Hold a second. This webcam is like $65. You know what? You watch YouTube shows where the video quality isn't as good as this. This is a great little camera. This is like a $60 camera. I'm telling you, you can get started in doing stuff like this for very, very little money. Get a little, I would say, if you had a little bit of money and you wanted to start something, where the two things I would invest your money in is, number one, a microphone. And there are a couple of very good USB mics that you can get for like $50, $60, $70. I wouldn't cheap out too much on the mic. Now, my mics are $300 microphones. But again, that's because my audience has supported the show. I want to take that support and invest it into the show to give them a better product if I can. But to start off with, man, when I was doing like AMC shows from either from the storage closet, or remember I had Studio B was in my house, I tell you, the cameras I was using for AMC theater shows were these things. These are Logitech or what are these called again? C920s. I think that's what these cameras are. Logitech C920s. That's what these are. You can get these for like $60, $70. And I used 3 or 4 of these in my studio back then. And I had like these $50 microphones. That's all you need. And you can get started. You can get started. And so, yes, when you get to whatever level I'm at, I guess, it gets more expensive to try to produce a better product. But at the end of the day, listen, you got guys out there right now that are trying to get started in doing this. Guys like John Roca, Mark Riley. There are a few people out there trying to do like the home thing, and you see they're doing exactly what I just suggested. They've got inexpensive little webcams, inexpensive mics, But the most important thing is the content, right? The content is what's king. Content is king. And so, no $1,000 camera or $300 microphone or whatever will make your content better. And, you get guys like John Roca, you get guys like Mark Riley, and guys like that doing their thing. And they don't need to have an expensive camera. They don't need to have an expensive microphone. If they can get to the point where they can invest into it and make it a better viewing experience for their audience, great. But you don't need that to start. Content is king. Mark Riley and John Roca are smart guys, and they'll make good content. Then you get a guy like a Christian Harloff, who also, last year decided to break out on his own. And he's at the level that I'm doing stuff. He's, invest in better mics, invest in better cameras, all that kind of stuff, create a better experience for all that. But to get started, dude, never be fooled or thinking that that's what you need to do it. You don't need that. If all you want to do is create some online YouTube content to create a nice little discussion with you and a part of the viewing community and blah, blah, you don't need all this crap. Build to it. Sure. Create a better viewing experience. Yes. But it's not what you need to start. It's not what you need to start. And for those of you who have followed me since the AMC days, you know that this has evolved. This has absolutely evolved, and it continues to evolve, and I will continue to do evolving with it. But yeah, anyway, that was an elongated answer for a very simple question. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry for this. Let's see. Where are we at? Now I lost my spot. I lost my place. Sorry about that, guy. You know me. I can ramble. Once I start talking about something that I'm passionate about, I can ramble. So sorry about that. Anyway, Jetfire writes. Oh, that's right. We already had the Jetfire stuff. Did we not? Yes, we already had the Jetfire stuff. There we go. So we move on to Tyler Yeats. And Tyler Yeats writes, my first movie I went to was Barney, 1998. And my parents told me when they played a song, I got up in the aisle and danced to it. Have a good Saturday. Dude, that's such a great memory. What a great thing to share. That's, I got to say, some people hate kids in movies. I don't mean in the movie themselves, but in a movie theater. Some people hate kids in movies. But I'll tell you what, some of my favorite in movie theater moments come from a kid being in the audience, right? Because there are times, and I got to say, maybe I'm just lucky. I've had more positive experiences in movies than I have with negative experiences. Because we've all had negative experiences in movie theaters with like a whiny kid or something like that being there. But also, they can create some of the most magical moments ever. Because I remember, like, there's been a couple times where I've been like in a Marvel movie and like something amazing happens on screen and the audience is dead silent, and then you hear like a little kid going, like a 3 or 4 year old kid going, wow, and then all of a sudden the whole theater like erupts into laughter or something like that. I love little moments like that. And I know most of us think just kids shut up. And yes, most of the time, yes, kids just shut up. But sometimes, I got to admit, I've had some in-theater movie experiences where a kid doing something spontaneous has just brought delight to everybody's hearts. I remember when I went to go see Frozen 2, right? The first time, I keep forgetting, Elsa, is that the snow one, the one with the ice powers? Elsa comes on screen, and she comes on screen. It's just a normal scene. She's on screen. And you hear some little girl in the background start singing, Let It Go, Let It Go. And everybody in the theater just chuckled. And you just, all of our hearts, it was magical. There was something great about it. And anyway, if I was in a movie theater and there was a music number and I saw some little kid get into the aisle and start dancing, oh, come on. Come on. That's great. But yes, most of the time, parents, if you have a kid there and they start crying, please just take them out of the theater. Just be nice to everybody. All right. Luke1234 writes, what is the worst crime wave you remember in Canada? I don't ever remember there being a crime wave in Canada. I mean, the most notorious crime things in Canada was always the Paul Bernardo and Homolka murders. That's the worst thing ever. That was that, but I don't ever remember there being a crime spree. Ben Dover writes, John, keep safe. Ann and I are keeping safe. We are 95% of the time we're just in the house. When we do leave the house, we're either just walking to a grocery store, and our grocery stores around us are being very, very smart. They're only allowing certain amounts of people in the grocery store at the same time, so people line up outside. It's been going great. Or we just go for a walk around our neighborhood because it's empty. There's nobody out there. And on the very rare occasion, like, people are being smart. Like, on the very rare occasion that we're walking down a sidewalk and we see that there's somebody else well down the sidewalk, either they will take the initiative and cross over to the other side, or we will cross over to the other side, maintaining that 6 feet of social distance, blah, blah, blah. But most of the time we're just staying here in the house, and yeah, it's going fine. It's going fine. Again, we're all making lemonade out of lemons right now, doing the best we can, but thanks for the well wishes, Ben. All right, Slim Trav writes, best, worst Eddie Murphy movie, in my opinion, Beverly Hills Cop, best Beverly Hills Cop, worst Norbit. It's hard not to say Norbit, but let's be honest here. With Eddie Murphy, there are a lot of movies that could be his worst. There's a lot of them. Norbit, Dave, the one with the tree with the leaves. I'm forgetting the name of that one. Oh God, that one was terrible. He's done a lot of bad films. He's done a lot of really bad ones. I think Norbit's probably a good pick. Listen, as far as his best, I am going to be so alone in this. And if we're not going to count his comedy special, like if we're not going to count Raw or Delirious, which I mean, Raw is probably my favorite thing he's done, or Delirious. I mean, they're both great, but I'm going to be so alone in this. My favorite Eddie Murphy movie. Well, no, then there's Trading Spaces, Coming to America are awesome. And then Dreamgirls, which he got an Academy Award nomination for. But I'm telling you what, man, I have a place in my heart for an Eddie Murphy movie that a lot of people hate. Golden Child. I don't know why. Don't hate me. Don't hate me. I love Golden Child. But there's that. All right. Dixon Sider just sends a super chat to be supportive. Thank you, Dixon. We appreciate that. Julius Goodwin writes, seriously, The Walking Dead lied to me. Living during the apocalypse just sucks. People are dying or losing their jobs. There's no cool redneck with a crossbow. There's no cool redneck with a crossbow, Daryl, or cute girl with ninja katana blades to be found. It just sucks. Yeah, it's all the sucky parts with none of the upside, right? All the sucky parts with none of the upside. I'm telling you, man. It's like living in a movie right now, isn't it, guys? It's kind of like living in a bad movie right now. It just sucks. We're just stuck at home. Which is terrible, which sucks. And again, it's a situation where some of us are just being inconvenienced, right? And let's be honest here. A lot of us are just suffering inconvenience. Like I can boo-hoo, Ann and I didn't get to go to Florida, boo-hoo. I mean, it's inconvenient. I don't get to go to the cafes. Normally at night, I like to walk to downtown Burbank. I've got a cafe with this big outdoor patio that I like to just go, take my iPad, go and sit there and write and work and do my show notes. And I just enjoy that stuff, right? And I'm not able to do that right now. We're not able to go to movies. Okay, but really at the end of the day, this is suffering inconvenience. It's inconvenience. It's a pain in the ass. It sucks, but it's inconvenience. Then there are people who are like legit suffering, right? Like waiters and waitresses and shop workers and movie theater employees and on and on and on. There are people who are losing jobs and they'll come back. But right now it sucks. And they're not able to get the things they need, or they're not able to pay the bills that they need to pay. And they're wondering what's going to happen tomorrow. And it sucks. And then on top of that, you got the next level of stuff where people are actually having health issues right now. And even if you have a health issue that's not related to coronavirus, the hospitals are getting overrun with coronavirus. So if you've got medical needs, you're not getting attended to. I mean, so there's 3 different levels. There's the easiest level, which is all of us who are suffering, at the very minimum, we're suffering massive inconvenience, which sucks. But then there's a much worse level than that, which is like people who it's affecting their jobs and all that kind of stuff. And then there's an even worse level than that on top of all that, they're experiencing health problems. It just sucks. I mean, the situation just sucks. And it is kind of like, Julius, like living in a bad movie right now. And it really sucks. But the best thing we can do is to make lemonade out of the lemons. All of us should act as if we have it. Because if we all imagined, let's pretend I have the virus. How will I conduct myself if I have it? That's how all of us should be conducting ourselves. If we did, and we do all the things we're supposed to do, we will get this stuff behind us faster rather than slower, sooner rather than later. How soon? I don't know. In 6 weeks, in 3 months, I don't know. But all I know is that if all of us do the things we need to do and get it behind us, then we can get back to it. So let's take care of ourselves, take care of the people around you, and do what we need to do. So anyway, thanks for giving me a laugh, Julius. Appreciate it. Where is it again? There's no cool redneck with a crossbow running around. Thank you for sharing that. That made me smile. All right, Jetfire97 writes, why is Jetfire stuff coming in out of order? Which artist do you have the most songs from? Mine is Taylor Swift. I mean, I think it's pretty easy for me. The artist I have the most songs from is U2. Now, my musical tastes are very diverse. I listen to metal. I listen to like classic 80s rock. I listen to a lot of modern stuff. I listen to a lot of hip hop. Like oddly enough, I do. I got a core love of hip hop going all the way back to my breakdancing days. I can almost, I can recite verbatim most Run DMC songs, but anyway, and all that kind of stuff. But my all-time favorite band is U2. That's who I got the most of. Darth Impact writes, I forgot yesterday I sent my top 5 better sequels. I have an honorable mention, Spider-Man 2. Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah, because normally when we think of Darth Impact, when we think of sequels that were better than the originals, usually that's a situation where the original wasn't that great. So for instance, one of mine, Rush Hour 2. The first Rush Hour, in my opinion, not that good. Rush Hour 2 is quite good, right? So Star Trek The Wrath of Khan. Well, Star Trek the motion picture is pretty much universally, not that great. But I think you're forgiven for not remembering Spider-Man 2 because the first Spider-Man is actually really good. It's just that Spider-Man 2, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, was even better. So that's a nice follow-up on that one, Darth. But I totally get why you'd overlook it because the first one's so good. All right. J Master writes, hey, John, have you watched the new series/competition cooking show, Be Our Chef? I have not, on Disney+. The host of the show is Angela Kinsey, in which you may know her from playing Angela Martin in The Office. Really? I know she's doing a podcast right now with Jenna Fisher, who was also in The Office I think it's called Office Girls. I think that's what it's called. And I need to start listening to that podcast because that's the two of them just telling stories about The Office, which, I mean, I'm completely fascinated by. But listen, my wife loves cooking shows. I gotta admit, I kind of like some cooking shows too. There are some cooking shows I like, but on Disney Plus, Be Our Chef. You know what? Just so I don't forget, let me text message Anne right now. Let me open my text messaging app here and send here. I'm just going to send her Be Our Chef. New cooking show on Disney Plus with Angela from The Office. There, now I've sent that to Anne. So thank you desperately, Jay, for putting that on my radar because I am very interested in that. And I didn't even have any idea that was there. I had no idea that was there. Shit, is Disney Plus becoming as bad as Netflix, letting people know about the stuff they've got on their network? Anyway, all right, thanks for the recommendation, dude. Matthew Chandra writes, hey, John, Anderson Silva, by far for me, is my favorite fighter of all time. I love his cockiness and swagger he brought to the octagon. Such a fierce striker. Listen, my all-time favorite fighter is George St. Pierre. Super respectful, honor, technical mastery, best grappler there has ever been in MMA. But I just watched last night, me and my buddy were watching the fight he had against Dan Hardy, the George St. Pierre versus Dan Hardy for the welterweight title. And it's just a great example of what George St. Pierre brought. All-time favorite. But there is nobody who had an era of dominance like Anderson the Spider Silva. There's never been any fighter that had a pure era Not just a few fights or a couple of years, like an era of dominance, like Anderson the Spider Silva. There was never any time that anybody even thought he could be beat. It was not until he, like everybody eventually does, he ran into Chris Weidman, and that ended the era. But up until that point, it was just unbelievable. And he could beat you any way he wanted to beat you. He'll give you a Mortal Kombat like front kick to the face that knocks you out, like he's done. He could submit you 20 different ways, which he did. He was the most accurate striker I've ever seen. There's never been a striker that has the accuracy of an Anderson Silva. His accuracy was nuts. Like every time he threw something, it would go where he intended it to go. It was just nuts. He was great. And he's still a very entertaining fighter to watch. That fight between him and Stylebender, Israel, that was a great fight. That was a great fight. Anderson Silva is in his mid-40s now, or getting close to his mid-40s. He is still incredibly entertaining to watch fight. He really, really is. I like watching Anderson Silva fight. Eric Clausen writes, "Hey, John, just wanted to throw out some semi-old movie recommendations. Number 1, Death Becomes Her. That's not bad. Number 2, Big. That is my wife's all-time favorite film, is Big. Number 3, well, Life is Beautiful. Roberto Benigni's masterpiece, one of the greatest films. Number 4, Pleasantville. Number 5, Outbreak, which I've been talking a lot, obviously, for obvious reasons, about Outbreak recently. That movie, Rene Russo, Morgan Freeman. Anyway, everybody's talking Contagion. You should be watching Outbreak in my opinion. But Death Becomes Her. Woo! Going back to some Bruce Willis stuff. Actually, if I'm thinking of the right one, hold on a second. I think I'm thinking of the right one. Death Becomes Her. Oh, am I thinking of the wrong movie? No, I'm thinking of the right one. Goldie Hawn, Meryl Streep, Bruce Willis. Yep. Because I remember. There was a shot in that movie that at the time, visual effects wise, was amazing, where she had the hole in the middle of her blown out, and then you could see through her. At the time, as a visual effect, that was mind-blowing at the time. And then Eric also writes, have you seen Tiger King yet? I mentioned that a little bit earlier. I watched the first little bit of it, and I'm like, okay, this is, But everybody's loving it so much, so I think I'm going to have to just sit down and watch the whole thing, because everybody seems to really, really like it, so I'll have to check it out. But this Joe Exotic dude, he's a different kind of dude. All right, Richard Karate writes, hey, John, did you see the Zhang Ziyi versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk fight? Wow, what a fight. Greatest women's fight in UFC history, if you ask me. I'm going to tell you what. If you guys have not seen this, you don't even have to be a mixed martial arts fan, okay? You don't even have to be a mixed martial arts fan. If there's somehow, some way you can find this fight, it's the type of fight that will turn you into a mixed martial arts fan. I remember back in the day, the Forrest Griffin versus Stephan Bonnar fight. That was the fight that made the UFC. The UFC had been around for a long time before that, but it was the Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonnar fight that made the UFC. The UFC as it is was truly born on that fight. It was the kind of fight that made non-fight fans fight fans. I haven't seen a fight likened unto that like this one. Man or woman. Easily the greatest women's fight of all time. I'd say top 3 or 4 any gender fight of all time. This was a fight that you're watching and you're just, I don't know how many times the words, oh my God, came out of my mouth watching this fight. These were two competitors throwing everything they had at each other. Like everything you possibly think of attacking each other with, standing in the pocket, toe to toe, just going to war. I'm getting goosebumps on my arm just thinking about this fight again. I haven't enjoyed a fight. Like the last time I enjoyed a fight maybe this much was the Gastelum Stylebender fight. That was also that was a barn burner too, but it's been a long time since I watched a fight that gave me the thrills that these women are straight up savage. Like straight up savage. And guys, I'm telling you what, you don't have to be an MMA fan. You don't have to be an MMA fan. I'm telling you, watch this fight. Watch this fight. It is heart. It's passion. It's determination. It's skill. It's toughness. It is the things that make the fight sports, the combat sports, so appealing. This fight epitomized all that. I haven't seen heart in a fight like this since that Forrest Griffin Stephan Bonner fight. It's just heart. They threw every bit of passion and willpower and heart and determination that either of them had. They dumped it all out. It's just, man, you can tell I get really excited just thinking about that fight, man. It was just, and both of them. You know, I've always respected JJ Joanna. She's was one of the most dominant female fighters in the world for a long time. Always respected her, but never the biggest fan of hers. I got to tell you what, after this fight, which she lost this fight. Split decision. Oh my God. And she did lose the fight, but I'll tell you what, I became a lifelong card-carrying fan of JJ after that fight. I became a lifelong fan of both of them after that fight. Holy shit, guys. I mean, I know we're not here to talk MMA, but I get excited just thinking about this fight. I got to go back and watch it again. And if you would just want to look up some pictures, look at some pictures of JJ at the end of the fight. Her head's like this big. I mean, she looks like the villain from Green Lantern with the head. It's just, I could talk about that fight all day, Richard. I could talk about that fight all day. All right. Guess the quote writes, "No one thinks they're a war criminal. Then you find yourself aiding a separatist movement to overthrow a democratically elected leader, and boom, you're a war criminal." Oh, that sounds familiar. Oh, God, that sounds familiar. I don't know. You stumped me. Guys in the live chat, what is that? Because I can't, I'm not pulling it off, and I'm going to wait here till I see somebody put it in there. I'm just waiting for somebody. If you guys in the chat know what this quote is from, because this sounds totally familiar, but I'm stumped on it. Anybody got it? Was that Winter Soldier? Somebody's saying Winter Soldier in there. Was it Winter Soldier? Was it Winter Soldier? Oh, a second. I'm trying to remember that. I know Winter Soldier pretty well. I'm not remembering that off the top of my head. Oh, that's some people are saying Harley Quinn. Oh, maybe that's okay. That could be a Harley. See, I know I don't remember. I see what I'm thinking. It sounds familiar. Oh, that's by the Jason Alexander voice character, right? In the wheelchair. That's right. No one thinks of a war criminal. Then you find yourself aiding a separatist movement and overthrowing democratic. Okay. Now it's sounding more familiar. Now, thank you, everybody in the chat. I appreciate that. Okay. Next one, Marie Seifring writes, "It was good to see the Vanity Fair report that Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson have recovered and have returned to LA, sending support and best wishes to you and everyone in our film fan family." Listen, here's the thing. Ann and I were just talking about this the other night. It was Tom Hanks getting this that changed everything. Tom Hanks getting it changed everything, right? I honestly don't think it's a coincidence that, one moment CinemaCon has on their website that we are still doing CinemaCon this year. We're going ahead with it. We're in consultation with all the health experts. We feel we can safely do this, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, Tom Hanks, it comes out in the news that he's got it. An hour later, CinemaCon's canceled. An hour and a half later, the NBA season is canceled. And look, it all would have got to this point anyway. But I am telling you, the world's fundamental view and understanding of this situation changed, materially changed, when the news came out that Tom Hanks had it. When America's Daddy came out. That's when it changed it. It completely changed everybody's perception at that point. But no, you're right. It was absolutely great to hear that they're on. First of all, it was great to hear when they got released from hospital, and now hearing that they're recovering. I mean, it's great news. It's absolutely great news. Thanks for that, Marie. Orange Hand writes, Favorite Simpsons Halloween special. There's a lot of them, and I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I still remember one when the alien was going to run for president. And they were like, because both the Republican and Democrat were both being controlled by the aliens, say, we'll vote for an independent runner. And the aliens go ahead, throw away your vote. Ha, ha, ha. That whole episode I thought was hilarious because that had a little bit of a political spin on it too. James Bonner writes, finally saw Knives Out. Great little film. I see Ryan couldn't resist having a touch of Star Wars added in the person of Frank Oz as the Wolverine. I loved that, by the way. Because I love Frank Oz. I nearly jumped. By the way, he directed, if I'm not mistaken, one of my all-time favorite comedies, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. But I believe Frank Oz directed that. Okay, now I've got to stop and look it up. Did Frank Oz... Let me just look it up here. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, God, that movie was in 1988. It's one of the greatest comedies ever made. And yeah, it was directed by Frank Oz. Yeah, seeing Frank Oz pop up was just put a huge smile on my face. And infamously almost killed Frank Oz because we were at one of the Star Wars premieres and Frank Oz was there and we were walking right beside him and he was had a cast on his leg and was on crutches. And Ann wasn't paying attention and bumped into him and like nearly knocked him over. It's like, oh my God, Ann, you nearly killed Frank Oz. And we would have been infamous. We would have been infamous. But yes, and I love that movie, dude. That movie's great. Okay. Jared McBride writes, where are we here? I just bought the Smallville series, the Dukes of Hazzard series, and the Criminal Minds series. I will be watching those. I will be busy for the next month. Oh, dude. First of all, the original Dukes of Hazzard series, that's some cheesy old watching right there. In a good way. Some cheesy old watching. Smallville, a lot of seasons to cover there. Criminal Minds, huge. Dude, if you just want... Man, if you want something that's going to keep you busy, CSI, that'll keep you busy forever. Supernatural, which is in its like, what is it, 14th, 15th season? Anyway, that'll keep you alive. But you got a lot of TV to get caught up on there, dude, and... You're going to find with all the free time we have, you probably will get caught up on all of them. So those don't sound like some good purchases, Jared. All right, Donaldo Martinez writes, I rewatched Lethal Weapon 4, my favorite out of the series. Jet Li was the lethal weapon in that movie. Listen, there are this comes up all the time, Donaldo. A lot of people always talk about Lethal Weapon. Too bad about number 4. I love part 4. I don't know that it's my favorite one. Might be, though, but I love part 4 with Jet Li. And like near the end too, when you got Mel Gibson and Danny Glover standing there at one end and Jet Li standing over there, and they're both talking to each other. It's like, this is insane, right? Like, we shouldn't do this. It would be totally crazy for us to do this. And they're like, whatever, and they go and fight him anyway. I thought it was great. It was North America's introduction to Jet Li. I really like that movie myself. All right, Oak I writes, Bloodshot was good. Besides the basic plot points, it was a nice mix of Edge of Tomorrow, Fast Furious, and RoboCop. Great execution by Vin Diesel. Dude, I'm thrilled you enjoyed it. I'm thrilled. I unfortunately did not get to have your experience. I thought it was very problematic. I will say this, though. For a lower budget comic book movie, because I think they did this movie for like $75 million or something like that. For a big comic book movie, that's a very reasonable budget. They pulled off some really fun visual effects. Like some of the action stuff, I gotta say, some of the action in this movie is actually quite good. And the visual effects, but lame villain. The big end fight was poorly built up to. Very, very basic plot. And a lot of little problems here and there. So like, really? So the villain would just do this here? I don't think so. Whatever. I loved I forget the actor's name from New Girl, but I loved his character. His character was pretty good. I wish I liked it more. I wish because you know me, I'm a big Vin Diesel fan. I love me some Vin Diesel. But I did not have the same experience you did. But that's cool. You did have that positive experience. That's awesome. You sat down, watch it, and you got some enjoyment out of it, and that's a wonderful thing. Okay. BW Rosa writes, are folks overreacting on the fall of Disney and comics? I don't know what you're talking about. The fall of Disney? Disney hasn't gone anywhere. Comics, listen, Diamond Distributing recently announced that they were no longer going to be distributing while this whole situation is going on. I don't think that it lends to the fall of. So you'd have to give me more context, BW. I'm not quite sure what it is you're asking, unfortunately. All right, Jake C. writes, I don't understand why NATO, that's the North American Theater Owners Association, came down on Universal. This is a crisis on one singular Earth where no one can live up to either end of their deal. I'll tell you why, Jake, because of this. Because every other studio did it right. And they're the only ones who didn't. They're the only ones who didn't. Like, here's the thing. When all these different movies were getting bumped from their release schedules, NATO said they all came and talked to us and they hashed through it with us. And they went through, hey, how are we going to do this? Because every other studio realizes that the theaters are their partners. They live in a symbiotic relationship. One can't really do business without the other. The theaters don't exist without the studios. The studios don't make any money without the theaters. They need each other. They're in a very tight relationship and a very tight partnership where one needs the other to properly survive and to profit and to work properly. They need each other. So when Warner Brothers was looking at delaying some of their films, they went and sat down with their partners and they went and talked to the theater owners. They went and talked to NATO and said they went through the process and they figured it all out. And they were like, yeah, got to bump this movie, got to bump that movie. Universal, not only did they give the double effers to the movie theaters, which is going to end up screwing themselves over. Universal is screwing themselves over. Let's be clear about that. But even if they made a bad decision, what really pissed off the theaters was Universal never talked to them about it. Every other studio recognizes, man, the theaters are our partners. We need them. They've always been there for us, and we're going to be there for them. And they talk it through, they consult with them, they walk them through it, they keep open lines of communication. Universal didn't even talk to the theaters about it. They didn't even talk to them about it. Let's say you have a business partner, right? You have a business partner that you do one thing, your partner does the other thing, you do A, they do B, and because of each other's works, you've always succeeded. You've been through some hard times, some good times, whatever. And then all of a sudden, without even talking to you about it, without even going and consulting with you, they just do something for themselves that completely screws you over. How are you going to react to that? And what Rob and I both said on the day this came out was, you know what? I bet you anything that even if the theater owners didn't like what Universal was doing in pulling Trolls from the theatrical release schedule and going straight to VOD, even if they didn't like that, if Universal had had the integrity of going to the theaters 2 or 3 days in advance and saying, listen, theater owners, this is a tough situation for all of us. We're thinking about making this very drastic move. But we wanted to come and consult with you about it. We wanted to walk you through, because we know this is going to be a pain in the ass to you guys. This is going to hurt you guys, our partners. We know doing this is going to hurt you. So we want to come and consult with you. We want to walk you through our decision-making process. We want to hear your point of view on this and blah, blah. If Universal had done that like every other studio had done and treated them like partners, I'll bet you while they may not have liked pulling Trolls and putting it straight VOD, I bet you they would have understood and they would have accepted it. But because Universal treated them like trash when every other studio treated them like a valued partner, NATO took offense to that. They took offense to that. And you know, I'll tell you what, listen, you know me, I'm usually on the studio side. Everybody gets mad at me because I'm usually the guy who's on the studio side. But I'm telling you right now, Universal effed this up and they're going to pay for it. They're going to pay for it. Because moving forward, the movie theater owners, it's not going to be anything that makes any headlines. It's not going to be anything that we're going to see a story about it in the Hollywood Reporter, Variety. It's going to be these little things over the next couple of years that the studios are not going to forget, or the theaters are not going to forget what Universal just did. And they're going to be like, oh, you want Fast and the Furious on all these IMAX screens? We'll give you 20% of them instead of the 80 that you want. That's not going to make news. No one's going to know about that. but it's going to hurt Universal a little bit. It's like, oh, you want this new movie you've got coming out to play with whatever? All right, we'll put it on this many screens instead of that many screens. We're going to save those extra screens for these other studios' movies. Again, not anything that's going to make the headlines. They're going to be, oh, you want trailers for your movie to play in front of this big film coming out? Sorry, Universal, the trailer spots are already all filled. Sorry about that. Not going to make headlines, not going to be in Variety, not going to be whatever. But here's a basic lesson in life, everybody. If you fuck somebody over, you better be ready to get fucked over back. It's just a lesson in life. If you fuck somebody over, you better be ready for the fact that they're going to fuck you over back. And it may not be all at once. It's going to be a death by 1,000 cuts. And Universal's going to have nobody to blame but themselves. And if Universal is smart, what they should be doing right now is doing a lot of back channel communication with the theater owners to say, listen, we're sorry. We listen, it's a bad situation. We didn't think it through. We threw you under the bus and we shouldn't have. And what can we do to make this right with you, our partners? I mean, if they're smart, that's what they're doing right now. But man, like I said, I have never heard such aggressive language between studios and theaters as when the head of the theater owners organization came out and said, Universal, you screwed us, and we will not forget this. We will not forget this. And I'm sorry, but I feel no sympathy for the people doing the screwing. Universal screwed the theaters, and they didn't even have the integrity to talk to them about it. I just... And I like Universal. Everybody knows I speak very highly of Universal normally, but when I saw that, I just couldn't believe it. I just could not believe it. That was a strange turn of events. And yeah, so guess what? Now when the things are good and things are good for the theaters, they're going to remember what Universal did to them. They're going to remember how Universal, just like you would. If you were in business with somebody and they treated you like trash, you would not let that go. You'd file that away and you'll think, okay, guess what? There's going to come a time where you really need me. There's going to come a time, because it happens all the time. So there's going to come a time sooner rather than later that you're going to need me. And I'll remember that when I needed you and I needed you to treat me with respect and I needed you to treat me like a partner, you weren't there for me. And I'm going to remember that. I'm going to remember that. It's called karma, bitch. So I don't know. We'll see. Again, I think it's just also the whole way Universal conducted themselves, how they didn't have the respect for their partners like every other studio did. Lionsgate, Sony, Paramount, Warner Brothers, Disney, they all had respect. They didn't. Universal didn't. And that's going to bite them in the ass later. First of all, their movie Trolls is going to completely bomb on VOD. It was going to bomb in theaters anyway, so it is what it is. And they're going to pay for it. But we'll see. Guys, listen, always be good to those people you got to do business with, because it will eventually bite you in the ass if you don't. Just putting that out there. Donaldo writes, top 5 guilty pleasures. Mortal Kombat. Yeah, that's like a number 1. Mortal Kombat is a terrible movie, and I love it. I love Mortal Kombat. I love that movie. And it's terrible, but it is what it is. Resident Evil, Megaforce, that's one of my all-time favorite guilty movies. Godzilla 1998 and Armageddon. Armageddon is all... Man, you got a lot of similar ones to me. Megaforce, Mortal Kombat, and Armageddon are all like right at the top, or at least right near the top of my all-time favorite guilty pleasure movies, Donaldo, so I'm completely with you on that. All right, B.W. Ross writes, movie recommendation, The Congress with Robin Wright. I'm not familiar with that one. That can't be a theatrical one, is it? Hold on a second. The Congress, 2013. Yeah, this definitely never hit theaters because I don't recognize it. It's got a good cast. So Robin Wright, Harvey Keitel, John Hamm, Paul Giamatti, Danny Houston, Cody Smith McPhee. I mean, holy crap. This cast is stacked. I've never even heard of this damn thing. Okay. An aging out-of-work actress accepts one last job, though the consequences of her decision affect her in ways she couldn't consider. Of course, Robin Wright Penn was just in House of Cards, and she was, of course, Princess Buttercup in The Princess Bride. I've not even heard of this one. Thank you for the recommendation on that, BW. Tim Platt writes, John, help. My hockey withdrawals are getting the best of me. I put on a nature documentary just so I could... Okay, that's the comment of the day so far. I put on a nature documentary just so I could boo the Penguins again. The Penguins is my second favorite team. Just because of Mario Lemieux. Mario Lemieux is my favorite player for a very, very long time. Like all-time favorite players, Mario Lemieux, Mike Bossy, Rick Vive. Those are like my favorites. But I've been a big fan, but of course, my number one is the Toronto Maple Leafs, but just so I could boo the Penguins again. That is a great line. Dude, I am so feeling the sports withdrawal. I am so feeling it. I don't even know how ESPN is managing to stay afloat right now. They literally have nothing to talk about except the NFL draft, which is normally a pretty big thing anyway, but that's all they got right now. All right, Eric DeRiggi writes, settle a bet. Another steak dinner on the line. I say the Living Dead movies are a shared universe. My friend says they are sequels. Your thoughts? Honestly, I mean, I've seen most of them, but I don't remember them enough. I don't remember them enough to really give a definitive opinion on that. Yeah, damn it, dude. It's a great question, but I can't remember them well enough to give an answer. So let us, Eric, turn that around and put it to all of you guys watching live. Is Living Dead a shared cinematic universe, or is it a set of sequels? You guys who might remember them better than I do, tell us what you think. Let's see here. Yeah, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, let's see here. Next up, who do we got? Where are we at? Tim Platt writes, quarantine, first-time watcher for the weekend. Casablanca, awesome. Singing in the Rain, iconic. And There Will Be Blood, not necessarily in that order. Yeah, well, one very different from the other thing. I've actually always said that, at least ever since I saw it, There Will Be Blood is not necessarily, in my opinion, a top 10 greatest movie of all time. It's not a top 10 greatest movie of all time. But the performance of Daniel Day-Lewis in that movie is, I will still contend and argue, I believe it is the single greatest performance by a lead male actor in Hollywood history. I think it is the greatest performance by a male lead actor in Hollywood history. It is just so... I've never seen anything like it. And there have been obviously a lot of great performances in Hollywood history, absolutely. But I don't think anything has ever equaled that one. By the way, I've just been looking for somebody to answer this question. Angel is saying all the Living Dead films were directed by George Romero, were part of the same continuity. Right, but does that equal sequel, or does that equal shared cinematic universe? Because you can have the same director do multiple films and still have it be a shared cinematic universe, right? I think. At least that's how I kind of look at it. Anyway, that will be an issue that will be open for debate for a long time, I think. All right. Where are we at here? Oak I writes, hope your documentary goes well. Excited to see it. I'm excited to see it too. As a matter of fact, thank you for that, Oak. I appreciate the well wishes, man. It's a totally different experience for me, but it's something I'm having fun with. So thank you for that. BZ820 writes, hey, John, I'm a huge Snowfall fan. Really? Which season 3... Oh, sorry. I was thinking of that terrible Michael Fassbender movie, The Snowman. Whew, that movie was terrible. Okay, Snowfall, the show. I have not watched it. I'm a huge Snowfall fan, which season 3 ended not too long ago. My question is, what, in your honest opinion, about the show? Again, I haven't watched it. So I'm not really familiar with it. I'm kind of limited on how much television I actually watch. But yeah, that's one I haven't seen yet. But again, I've heard very good things about it. I've heard good things about it, but I can't give you any kind of an opinion. So those of you guys in the live chat right now, if you watch Snowfall, if so, let Beezy know what you think about Snowfall. It's an interesting topic. Again, just to show I haven't had a chance to watch yet. Let's see. Oh, yeah. I felt so bad there. It's like, you like Snowfall? That piece of... Oh, I'm thinking of the Snowman. Anyway. Chris Warden writes, here's my top 10 action movies in no particular order. Number 1, Bad Boys 2. Number 2, Commando. Number 3, The Raid. Number 4, Rambo. Number 5, Starship Troopers. Number 6, Hard Boiled. Number 7, T2. Number 8, Face Off. Number 9, Lethal Weapon. And number 10, Die Hard. You don't have my number 1 all-time favorite action film on your list. Although these are all great movies. These are all great movies. But you don't have my number 1 all-time favorite action film. My number 1 all-time favorite action film is James Cameron's, Arnold Schwarzenegger's, can you think of it? True Lies. True Lies is my all-time favorite action film. Now, there's often been discussions about, well, is it more of an action film or a comedy? I say I think it's an action film with a lot of comedy. It's an action film with a lot of comedy. That is my all-time favorite. And again, not to take away from any of the great ones you got on your list there, Chris. Not to take away from any of the great films you got on your list. I'm just saying that it hurts my heart that you don't have my number 1 all-time favorite on your list. All right, Alex Spur writes, and then just 1 or 2 more guys, and then I got to take a little bit of a break here because we've been going for 2 hours and I've run out of my drink and my throat's starting to get a little bit raw. So we'll take a few more here, then we'll take a little bit of a break. All right, Alex Spur writes, I was wondering what your most underrated superhero film is. Oh, that's easy. I've said that a million times. For me, it's The Shadow. I love The Shadow with Alec Baldwin, and it's a great movie. I enjoy it a lot. Ian McKellen is in that. I love The Shadow. It's great. The villain is terrifying with his mind control. Khan is in that. Yeah. My 3 most underrated superhero films of all time. Everybody knows what my number 1 is. Man of Steel. Man of Steel is by far the most underrated, underappreciated superhero film ever made. My second most underrated superhero film of all time is the first Thor movie directed by Kenneth Branagh. That to me is it's one of my favorite comic book films ever. It's just amazing. Third is Captain America, the First Avenger. A lot of people look at it, it's like, Captain America, First Avenger. That movie's great. I don't know what people are talking about. So to me, those are my 3 most underrated comic book films of all time. Number 1, Man of Steel. Number 2, Kenneth Branagh's Thor. And number 3, the first Captain America, the First Avenger. That's mine. But I do love The Shadow. I really do. David House writes, I hate that I didn't like Marriage Story. Hey, listen, that is like me with Roma. Right? Everybody loved Roma, and then I watched Roma, and I'm like, oh my God, this is boring me to death. I didn't like Roma. I hate that I didn't like Roma, because everybody else did. But listen, we all have films, all of us, that everybody loved, and we didn't. Everybody's got those movies. Whether it's Marriage Story, whether it's Roma, whether it's Godfather, whether it's, I don't know, Jojo Rabbit, whether it's anything. I mean, we all do, and there's nothing wrong with that. All film is subjective. It hits us differently, and if you didn't like Marriage Story, you didn't like Marriage Story, and you don't have to apologize for that. Another semi-professional writes, off the top of your head, what IP would give you the most excitement if you heard it was going to be adapted or rebooted as a movie? #Ghibli. Off the top of my head, there's been talk about it for years, and there was an Asian one, which wasn't very good, but it's Star Blazers, a.k.a. Space Battleship Yamato. I love that. I love Star Blazers, aka Space Battleship Yamato is what it was also known as. I loved it. There was an Asian live action version of it, which was not very good, but there's been talk and reports about different people in studios getting the rights to do a live action version of it in Hollywood. It's never materialized. I'm telling you, dude, if they ever announced that, I would jump out of my skin. A Space Battleship Yamato, aka Star Blazers, live action cinematic universe or franchise, whichever, I would lose my mind with excitement. I would be so excited for that, dude. It would be hard to contain. It would be hard to contain. All right. Let's see here. Next one up we have is Stubble McShave. All right, and this will be the last question we take before we take a short break, guys. Stubble McShave writes, You said that they can't do post-production now on projects. However, in a recent Q&A that Rafe Judkins, the showrunner of Wheel of Time, did with fans, he said that they work on all aspects of post-production on the filmed episodes from home. You can't, listen, there are things you can do, much like pre-production, right? There are things you can do. It's very slow without having to have people in the same room. But a lot of the stuff you do need. So you can continue to work, just like Tom Cruise right now is continuing pre-production work on Mission Impossible 7. But it's extremely slow because he can only do it with like 1 or 2 other people at a time. When normally he would have teams of 15 or 20 or 25 people, now he can't. So yes, work can continue, but it's a, truncated, kind of shortened, abbreviated, whatever you want to call it, aspect of it that is really going to slow it down a lot. You can still do it, but it slows it down a lot. That's true of both pre-production and post-production. You can still do work, but it's not going to be going nearly at the speed or nearly at the efficiency as if it would if it was, everything was back to normal. You could have teams getting together and working on things properly and blah, blah, blah. So there's absolutely that as well. All right. I said that was the last one. I'll make this the last one. Then we'll take our break here. Alex Spur writes, what are your thoughts on The Many Saints of Newark coming to HBO soon? It's a prequel to The Sopranos. James Gandolfini's son is playing Tony as a kid. Yeah, that I remember. I think I was still with AMC when news of this first came out. Honestly, I think it wasn't even Collider yet. I think we were still at AMC when we first talked about this story. Now, it wasn't James Gandolfini's son playing James Gandolfini, but when the news first came up about them doing The Many Saints of Newark, I think it's an intriguing idea. But I mean, I have no more or less excitement than I would for any show because this is going to be its own standalone thing. You're going to have a young Tony Soprano, but the show's not about young Tony Soprano. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I've always been curious about it. It got on my radar years ago. It stayed on my radar and I'm looking forward to it. But I'm not jumping over the hill with excitement as I would be for a lot of other shows, but yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see what they do with this, Alex. All right, guys. With that down, I am now going to take a quick 4-minute break. I'm going to rest the vocal cords, stretch the legs. We've been going for 2 hours and 10 minutes already. I'm going to go refill my drink if you don't mind. So continue to talk amongst yourselves, use the bathroom if you like, and then come back and join us in just a couple of minutes. So hang tight, guys. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. See you in a moment. Guys, and we are back. Thank you for your patience and indulgence as I took a little bit of a break there. Now let's jump right back in and keep things going with your questions. All right, that was Alex that we just did last. Darklock63 writes, one or two, Altered Carbon, re-sleeved as an animated. I had a whole bunch of people write to me say, John, re-sleeved as an animated. After somebody asked about it, I'd never even heard of it because I don't watch Altered Carbon either. Is an animated movie set in the Altered Carbon world. It is not season 2 and only shares characters, themes, and names. It deals with the protagonist being re-sleeved, downloaded into a new body. Two of two, in order to protect a young girl who is integral to the succession ceremony for a Yakuza clan. Lots of swordplay and ninjas. You may like it. This is not Altered Carbon season 2. Interesting to know. Well, I'm probably not going to be personally myself. I'm probably not going to be interested in it because I don't watch the show. So since I don't watch the show, I don't have a lot of interest to watch an animated spin-off of the show. You know what I mean? Now, whether I should be watching the show is an entirely different question. It's entirely whether I should be watching whether I should be watching the show is an entirely different question. And maybe I should be watching the show. I just had too many people I know say that they weren't really interested. They didn't like it all that much. I know a couple of friends that loved it, but again, if it's hard for me to imagine I'd be interested in watching an animated spinoff of a series that I don't even watch, but I'm sure probably a lot of you guys have, and are like probably screaming at your computer monitors right now, you should be watching this, and maybe that's true. Maybe that's true, but I'm not watching it right now. Okay. Chris Warden writes, but thank you for the information on it, by the way. I appreciate that very much. Chris Warden writes, my top 10 war movies in no particular order. Number 1, Platoon. Number 2, Glory. Number 3, Last of the Mohicans. Stay alive. Number 4, We Were Soldiers. Number 5, Saving Private Ryan. Number 6, Braveheart. Number 7, The Dirty Dozen. Number 8, The Patriot. Number 9, 1917. Number 10, Full Metal Jacket. I mean, all great movies. My order would be a little bit different, Chris, but man, that's some really great movies in there. We Were Soldiers, haven't heard that talked about in a long time. Glory, haven't heard that talked about in a long time. Some really, really good ones on there. Well done, sir. Okay, let's move on here. Next one up is Star Wars Rocks, who writes, hey, John, in my recommendation about Tenkai Knights, there wasn't enough space for me for me that their powers come from another planet called Corton. Isn't that also like Power Rangers, that their powers actually come from something alien? I don't know. It's everything you say about it, Star Wars. I gotta say, it just makes it more and more sound like a version of Power Rangers in one shape or form. I don't know. I'm curious. All right. Richard Karate writes, John, I see you collect pops. I do. What is the best pop you have, and what is the most expensive? The best one I have, my favorite one, are actually my first two, Sam and Dean Winchester from Supernatural. Those are the first two pops I ever got. I was not buying pops like everybody else in the office was at the time. And then my brother-in-law, Ray, bought me Sam and Dean Winchester. And I loved them. And then I started buying a couple. And then I bought a couple more. And now I have hundreds. I have hundreds of them. But the best one, I showed this one recently. The best one I have and the most expensive one I have is... And none of them are terribly expensive. That's the great thing about pops. but is this one here. Let me go to my wide shot so you guys can just get a little bit of a better idea of what I got here. Is this guy right here. This is by far the largest pop I have ever seen, but it's also Indiana Jones holding the idol. Holding the idol. This is the best pop that I have. And I mean, I've got some good Thanos stuff and some good Darth Vader stuff, but this size pop, I could not resist it. I got this from Disneyland. It was a Disneyland exclusive. There are a couple of others out there that are this size that are exclusives to different stores. Like I think there's a Deadpool one that's this size as well, and maybe one or two others. But Indiana Jones holding the idol, man. I mean, that is prime. Now, what I don't do is I don't buy collectible ones. Like I don't go on and find people that own one and it became a collector's item and now it's worth $500. Like I don't buy those. Like I buy them off the shelf. That's how I buy pops. But so that's probably the best one that I have. I love that. I love Indiana Jones, man. Just love Indiana Jones. Okay, let's keep going here. Richard also writes, did you hear the rumors about Keanu Reeves being in talks to play Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider in the MCU, possibly in Doctor Strange 2? Any truth to this? Man, I doubt it. I doubt it. The question is, where does the rumor come from, right? Where's that rumor coming from? And I'm honestly asking, I don't know. If it's coming from Deadline, if it's coming from the Hollywood Reporter, if it's coming from Variety, if it's coming from Entertainment Weekly, if it's coming from any of those places, well, then maybe you need to keep an eye on it. If it's coming from, Bob's Gas Station movie reviews.fart, then probably not. If it's coming from an anonymous Reddit thing, then probably not. But it's one of those spaghetti against the wall things, right? Because what we know for a fact is that Keanu Reeves and Kevin Feige have met they've tried to find ways to get Keanu Reeves into the MCU for a long time. Keanu Reeves is interested in being in the MCU. Kevin Feige wants him in the MCU. We've known that for a long time. I don't know that they're going to go Ghost Rider anytime soon, though. But I mean, look, nothing is impossible, though. Keep that in mind. Nothing is impossible. But I'm just going to say right now, I wouldn't completely write it off as being an impossibility. But right now, I'd say I'd be skeptical. All right. Mike T54 writes, hey, John, long time. Thank you very much. Since I've been able to catch you live. Well, it's good to have you here, Mike. I'm luckily still working. Question for you. How does this situation affect movies that have been marketing already or in the middle of production? Well, I mean, that's obvious. This will throw off the budgets for these movies significantly, especially since the movies that are done, they have to remarket them with new release dates, significant problems for studios. No, oh, absolutely, Mike. Absolutely. That is one of the, actually, if not one of the, maybe the biggest problem. It's the movies that have already sunk a lot of money into marketing. That's why when like a Bloodshot comes out and Sony went to the theaters and said, hey, look, and Bloodshot had just opened. And now the theaters were closing down. And even the theater owners put out a public statement that says, hey, we understand that they got to do that. They sunk all this marketing money into it. We're not open for them to play the movies. They've got to take it to VOD. They started playing it in theaters for a weekend, then everything went to hell. They got to shut it down, blah, blah, blah. But fortunately, there's not a ton. There were others like The Way Back, Invisible Man, things like that have already spent like significant parts of their marketing budgets on their movies. And that is very, very problematic. Because now, for instance, take a movie like Wonder Woman. They had already spent a bunch of marketing money, not the vast majority of their marketing money. They hadn't started their serious marketing push yet, but they did spend some money on their marketing campaign. And now they've got to reassess and then remount an entirely new marketing campaign. And absolutely, Mike, that's an issue. That is absolutely an issue. You're 100% on the money with that. All right, Brandon Plummer writes, it would be super cool to see fans finish the Snyder Cut. I bet YouTube channels like Corridor Digital would jump on that, release it unfinished. No, the thing is, Warner Brothers would never let other people finish it. They would, if at anything, they'd just release it as is. Just release it as is. I personally don't want to see fans finish it, to be honest with you. I have no desire to see fans finish it. Just release it as it is. A lot of the work on it's been done. It's not complete, and that's fine. Just release it. Release it. Listen, people who want the Snyder Cut are okay if there's still some green screen, and if there are some effects not done, and if something where that's supposed to be a monster in the background, it's a wire figure, they'll be okay with that. Because what they really want is they want to see what was this movie of his going to look like. And I think it would be perfectly fine for them to do it that way. I'm personally not interested in seeing fans complete it. But maybe that's just me. Who knows? All right, Daniel Hinosha writes, "Oh, our wives, an epic date night when this is over." Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Because one of the big unfortunate things for my wife is she's stuck in the house with me because she's working from home too. So that's been absolutely, and not to mention I was supposed to take her to Florida for her birthday. And that's clearly not happening. So we definitely owe all of our significant others a massive date night when this is over. Richard Karate writes, "Have you seen the trailer for Mr. Dundee starring Paul Hogan?" No, I've heard about this, but I have not seen it myself. You know what? While I'm here, I should just pull that up. Hold a second. Mr. Dundee trailer. Okay, there we go. All right, so I've now got it pulled up on my browser. I've been hearing about this. I've not watched the trailer myself, though, but I've got it queued up now, Richard, so I will be going to watch it, but I've not checked it out yet. Man, like everybody forgets today just how big of a pop cultural hit Crocodile Dundee was. It was massive. Like everybody was saying, that's not a knife, this is a knife. Like everybody was saying it. It was just such a huge impact. It was crazy. Anyway, Darklock 63. Sorry, you can hear my voice starting to go. Double feature recommendation. Long Kiss Goodnight and Pacific Heights. Which one is Long Kiss Goodnight? I love. I talk about Long Kiss Goodnight a lot. But which one is Pacific Heights again? Hold on a second. Pacific Heights. Oh, the Melanie Griffin one. That's right. I've completely forgotten about this movie. Matthew Modine is in that one too, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, Kamaya, you know what? That's not a bad match with Long Kiss Goodnight. That's not. But seriously, now that you bring it up, a lot of people have not. That's actually a good one. Long Kiss Goodnight is a good one to do for movie recommendation for us to do during the John Campea. You know, I might actually do that one this week sometime because that's a good one. That's a really, if you guys haven't seen The Long Kiss Goodnight, absolutely look up The Long Kiss Goodnight. It's a lot of fun. Good recommendation, Dark Lock. I like it. All right. John Hine writes, "Really enjoyed the anniversary." Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. The Manolis character was hilarious, and that outtake scene at the end had me rolling. He couldn't say courteous. Huh? So I did a little film a while ago called The Anniversary. And the Manolis character is literally played by a guy named Manolis. And he's a great stand-up comedian. His name's Manolis Zentanos. And he's a friend of mine from Canada. And so when I was making this movie, I just thought, he'd be perfect for this, even though he wasn't an actor. And it's clear in The Anniversary that Manolis is not an actor, but he's such a great comedian. It's just, so I had him come down and do the movie. And his character is great, and he's wonderful in it. I can watch Manolis all day. But anyway, there's an outtake at the end where he's got to say this one sentence, and the word is courteous. The word's courteous. He's just got to say the word courteous. And for whatever reason, now he also had these two beautiful blonde twins. I always mispronounce it, the Gomsruds. Anyway, wonderful girls. Actually, I love them both. And I remember I auditioned one. I thought, man, I got to find a role in the movie for this one. And then another girl came in. I'm like, wait a minute, did we not already interview you earlier today? And it was her twin sister. And anyway, so we put them in. We gave them this small role in the film. And they were also, as Manolis was desperately trying to get through this line, and he would always say corneous. He just couldn't say courteous. And then the girls eventually started to have fun with it because in the scene, there's supposed to be one on each, like he's sitting there shirtless and he's got one of each of the two sisters like kind of leaning on his shoulder on each side. And he's on the phone talking to his buddy while these two girls are here. And at some point, the twins just started to have fun with it because they realized he was having a hard time. And so they started like nibbling on his ear. Like they started doing all these things to distract him, and it just exasperated the problem, made it even worse. And it was It is honestly one of my favorite things of my own movie was an outtake. I don't know what that says about my movie, but one of my favorite things of my own movie was that outtake, because it is to this day one of my absolute favorite things ever, is Manolis just trying to say courteous. Anyway, thanks for watching my movie, man. I appreciate that. All right. Boosters the Name writes, I recommend watching The Right Stuff immediately, followed by First Man. Oh, that's a good double feature. The First Man, I got to admit, wasn't as good as I was hoping it would be. It was directed by Damien Chazelle, if I'm saying his name even right. It's the guy who did La La Land, and he did the J.K. Simmons one with the drumming. Why am I forgetting the name of that movie? Anyway, and then he did First Man, Ryan Gosling, terrific cast, looked absolutely amazing, and it's good. It's a good movie, but it wasn't quite like Best Picture of the Year kind of material like I was kind of hoping it would be, but whatever. It was still great regardless. And I enjoyed it a lot. But that's actually a pretty good double feature suggestion, Booster. I like that. Right Stuff, followed by First Man. Good recommendation. I like that. Oak Eye writes, Xbox Live should bring back first 1 versus 100 in all of this. I don't know what 1 versus 100 is. I'll tell you that straight up. I don't know what that is. Hold a second. 1 versus 100. Oh, it's a game show. Oh, I remember this. My wife got into this. That's right. And how's that related to Xbox, though? I'm not quite sure, but I remember this. My wife was very big into that. How is that related to Xbox? Anyway, Michael Bradley writes, one thing for sure, John, the theaters, when they open, will be the cleanest ever. Oh, my God. Not just because no one's been in there for a while, but because, like, even when this was starting, and they were trying to keep the theaters open, like with like limit 50% capacity. Then they were like limiting to 20% capacity, and then they just closed down. But in the midst of all that, they were also going in heightened cleaning protocols of like disinfecting the theaters and all that kind of stuff. But you're absolutely right, Michael. Like when we go back into these theaters, they will be in as pristine condition. When you go back into your favorite theater, it will be the most pristine, clean version of that theater you've probably ever seen. At least version of that particular theater, it'll be the cleanest you've ever seen it. So that's definitely for sure, Michael. All right, Richard Karate writes, recommendations, The Rocketeer, which so many people have been talking about The Rocketeer lately. Guilty pleasure of mine, Treasure Planet, Body Slam with Dirk Benedict. I am not familiar with Body Slam. I love Dirk Benedict. He's Starbuck. He's Face in the A-Team. Next Friday and Friday after next, The Outlander. Outlander is another one, actually. That's been coming up a little bit. But if you'll forgive me, just because you said it has Dirk Benedict in it, I got to check this out. Body Slam with Dirk Benedict. Let's see. It's a 1986 film. Man, I do not recognize this at all. Let me bring it up here for you guys so you can see what it is I'm looking at. I do not recognize this movie at all. So it's directed by Hal Needham. It had Dirk Benedict, Tanya Roberts, Rowdy Roddy Piper was in it, Captain Lou Albano, so clearly it's a wrestling theme with the name of it and everything. Charles Nelson Riley was in it. I have no recollection of this whatsoever. First of all, Dirk Benedict. The big critic quote on it right up here in the middle at the top, funny film. That's the big critic quote, funny film. I have never even heard of this thing, and yet it's got Dirk Benedict, and I love that guy. So, sorry guys, you can hear my voice starting to go. I got to see if I can check that one out. Thank you for putting that one on my radar. Thank you, because, yeah, I've never even heard of that one. All right, Richard Crowdy also writes, did you ever see their show Nikita? If so, your thoughts? Yes, as a matter of fact, a buddy of mine, for those of you who followed me for a really long time, I mean, this is going way, way back. But I like Nikita, by the way. Back in my days that I was doing my first website, The Movie Blog, we had a podcast called The Movie Blog Audio Edition. And one of my regulars on the show was a buddy of mine by the name of Darren Connolly. Now, Darren Connolly, brilliant dude, actually really super smart, super funny. Just, I love that guy. But anyway, Darren was getting into, as a side thing, being an extra in like movies and TV shows. That wasn't his career. He wasn't an actor, but he just started getting into that and making some extra side money, being an extra in movies and TV shows. And he was like, I remember one of the big things he did initially was in Nikita. And he was like this henchman looking guy, because he's got a very gentle face. But if you look at a certain way, it's like, no, he could have a very hard face. And he was like the black leather jacket. And then he ended up doing a number of spots for it where he's like black leather jacket face dude. So it's just funny that you mentioned Nikita, because that's the first thing that comes to my mind. All right. Let's see here. I lost it. Oh, did you ever see Nikita? Okay, now we move on. Ben Robron writes, just want to say thanks for the great content, John. Oh, thank you so much, man. It's always nice when people just want to write in and say something nice. Hey, it is my pleasure. Thank you guys for letting me do this show and helping me keep my sanity as well as we do all this kind of stuff. So thank you for that, dude. I appreciate that. Ben Rayner writes, do you think HBO... you probably the W was probably accidental. Do you think HBO Max will be released one time or delayed because of the virus? I can't wait for this service. Harry Potter and DC, just a few. I don't see why it would be delayed. If anything, with everybody being at home, this is a good time to release it. And I would think a lot of the original stuff was probably already done. So I'm not sure. Like, to be honest, Ben, I don't even know off the top of my head when it was supposed to release. I can't even remember when it was supposed to release or when it's supposed to come out. But my guess is, and Ben, this is purely a guess, dude. This is purely a guess. My guess is that it will not be delayed. Because again, I mean, everybody's at home. This is a home streaming service. So my guess is it won't be delayed, but you never know. We'll have to keep our eye on the situation. Lord Vanderkill writes, movie suggestion, The Royal Tenenbaums. I like The Royal Tenenbaums. It's a quirky little one, but all of his movies are, right? And the whole tennis-related theme was a good one, but I like Royal... One of the last Gene Hackman movies, too, which is an interesting point about that. But I like that. Good recommendation, Lord Vanderkill. The Royal Tenenbaums, if you haven't checked it out. That style isn't for everybody, but it may be for you. So I would say check that out. Richard Karate writes, best Rufus Sewell performance. Rufus Sewell has made a career out of being random villains in different ones. A lot of people will remember him as like the big villain from the main villain in A Knight's Tale with Paul Bettany. Anyway, that's been... A Knight's Tale's been a movie that's come up a lot lately. I don't know why, but Knight's Tale's come up a lot. But what would be his best? Let's go over to his IMDb page for a second and look this up. I think he hit on a friend of mine once, which is pretty cool. One of my friends, they're big... Dark City's got to be one. Hold on a second. Getting his IMDb page up here. There it is. Okay. Yeah, Dark City's got to be one. Oh, I liked him in Tristan and Isolde. Not the best movie, but I liked him in that. The Illusionist, Knight's Tale. These are the ones that come up a lot. Again, Rufus Sewell is one of these actors where a lot of people don't know his name, but then when you see his face, you're like, oh yeah, I've seen him in like tons of stuff. He's kind of like David Morse that way, right? I've always liked him as an actor. Whenever he pops up in stuff, I usually dig him a lot. Hercules, The Sea, All Things Men, Restless Hotel Noir. You probably got to go Dark City. I mean, probably. I really like him in Knight's Tale, though. I think if he doesn't work as that real slimy bad guy in Knight's Tale, I don't know that Knight's Tale works if it's not for him in it. So I think a lot of people will lean Dark City. I'm going to go Knight's Tale. Maybe it's just because I'm a sucker for that movie, but I'm definitely going to go Knight's Tale. I'm going to go Knight's Tale. Okay, let's move on here. Senpaigar writes, watched Civil War again yesterday. I love that movie so much. Cap is my favorite in the MCU, the unwavering hero that sticks to his moral code. And here's the great thing about Cap. This is why by the way, Senpaigar, Cap is also my favorite MCU character. I'm not saying he's my favorite comic book character. He's not. But in the MCU, the reason Cap was my favorite character was, number one, he had an unwavering commitment to his moral code. an unwavering commitment to it. But what made him fascinating in the MCU was that as he jumped from one era to a new era, we see him starting to reassess what his moral code was. No, let me rephrase that. He didn't reassess what his moral code was. He had to reassess, how does his moral code relate to the world that he is in right now? Because when he was in his original era in Captain America, the First Avenger, his moral code, he completely understood very clearly how his moral code applies to the era and the government that he worked with and all that kind of stuff. It was very, very clear how his moral code was applied to the elements in the era that he was in. As we move him forward now into the new era, we see the beginning of this evolving of his understanding about how his moral code, which does not change, but what does change is how that moral code interacts and reacts to the environment that he's in. As he starts, because when he first comes to the new era, he thinks he can just take his moral code and it applies the same way it applied in the other era, only he's finding out that the era he's in now is very, very different. And as those changes start to become clear to him, we start to see an evolution and a change in how that moral code interacts with his environment. And that's become one of the most fascinating things and what makes Cap so fascinating in the MCU. And in the midst of all those changes, at his center, his moral code never wavers. It never wavers. But how it interacts with the environment does. It's incredible. Because you go back to First Avenger and it's like, it interacts with my environment by being completely loyal to the government. Because the government is working on behalf of all Americans and it's always doing what's best. But then we come into a new era when he realizes that it doesn't. And so you get into Winter Soldier, you get into Winter Soldier, and like the first time Nick Fury takes him down to show him the helicarriers, and he's like, this doesn't seem like freedom, this seems like fear. This seems like we're possible. And so his code stays the same, but how it interacts with what he needs to interact with starts to change. It's fascinating. And that is why Cap to me is also my favorite MCU character. Anyway, I don't expect everybody to agree with me, but that's just kind of the way I see it. All right. Next up, Eric DeRigi writes, did you know Grant's app on Leno pushed Leno. Oh, Hugh Grant. An app is not app, it's appearance. Okay, get it. Hugh Grant's appearance on Leno pushed Leno's ratings over Letterman at the time. That's when Letterman went to CBS and was winning the ratings daily. That's actually, I'm not surprised, because we were talking about that a little bit earlier in the show. That whole moment when he comes out, it's like, what the hell were you thinking? And just the fact that Hugh Grant, in the midst of this huge controversy, was making a public appearance like that was absolutely huge. Sorry, guys, my voice is really starting to go. Was absolutely huge. Sorry, we're getting close to 3 hours here, so I'm going to keep going as long as I can. I might be running out of time here, guys, just so you know. But no, I didn't realize that. I probably knew that at the time, but I didn't realize that, Eric. But it makes total sense, right? It completely makes total sense that happens, and then in the midst of that happening, making an appearance on a talk show. That would be huge. Like, I'm trying to think of something that would be applicable to it. Like, who's like Hollywood's big adorbs couple right now? I don't know who the big Hollywood adorbs couple, but if you found out one of them was caught with a hooker and then the next day appeared on Ellen or Jimmy Fallon, the ratings on that would be huge, wouldn't it? It absolutely would. All right, Ben Rayner writes, favorite side characters and secondary characters from The Office. Mine's Packer, Jan, and Walt. Well, yeah, Jan was great. The Jan character was amazing. And Wallace was obviously a main thoroughfare and all that. He was, by the way, the dude who played Wallace, he's on that new sci-fi show with the guy from House. The name of the show is the name of this space yacht that's going through the galaxy, and it stars the actor from House as the main guy. But anyway, the dude who played Wallace on The Office is a character on that show. Just interesting little side note. Who's another one? The guy from Anchorman, the sports guy, the what was his name in Anchorman? Anyway, the sports one, because you have the news team and there was the sports guy. He had a recurring character on The Office. He was a great side character. Who was another really good side character? I don't know. I'd have to think about it more. Amy Adams was a pretty good for a couple of episodes too. Those were in the early seasons with Amy Adams. But yeah, Jan and Wallace. I mean, Jan was so funny. Michael's relationship with Jan was so great. I love that. All right. Let's see here. Richard Crotty writes, my friends say that Johnny Depp would be a great Joker for the Patman verse because he is good at playing weird and cookie characters. Would you be down if Depp was announced as Joker? Well, I mean, here's the thing. Johnny Depp is a very good actor. So, you know, that's the only thing I ever ask. Do you think this person would play good this? Are they a good actor? That's the only question I ever ask. Are they a good actor? Johnny Depp is clearly a very good actor. So I'd be fine. And by the way, listen, I thought he was great in that recent Fantastic Beasts movie. I thought he was great as Grindelwald. I really do. And I know that movie has its detractors, but I like that film. And I particularly thought Johnny Depp was actually really good in it. Now, listen, I'm not going to get into all the stuff going on around Johnny Depp right now. None of my business. Everybody thinks they know. No, you don't. You don't know anything. Let's just be clear about that. You don't know anything about that situation. Neither do I. Be that as it may. But keeping that out of it. So yeah, tomorrow if they announce that Willem Dafoe is Joker, I'd be down with it. He's a great actor. If they announce that Chiwetel Ejiofor was the new Joker, I'd be totally down with it. He's a great actor. If they announce that Johnny Depp was the next Joker, sure, I'd be down with that. He's a very good actor. But this is the problem with fan casting, right? This is the problem with fan casting. People who want Johnny Depp as Joker, well, it's because they've got a certain type of Joker in their head. But what if that's not the Joker that the movie's going for, right? Nobody liked Heath Ledger's casting as Joker. But everybody didn't know what kind of Joker specifically that Christopher Nolan was going to do in the movie. Everybody who says they want Johnny Depp as Joker, well, that's because they've got a certain iteration of Joker in their mind, but that might not be, by the way, there isn't going to be a Joker in this next movie, but if Matt Reeves ever does want to put a Joker in there, it's not necessarily going to be give me a second. It's not necessarily going to be the Joker that they've got in their heads. It might be a totally different kind of Joker in which Johnny Depp wouldn't be a good fit. So that's one of the reasons why I usually shy away from fan casting. And all I can say is, since I don't know the iteration of the character you're going for, just tell me you're getting a good actor. Just tell me you're getting a good actor. As long as you get a good actor, I'm on board and I'm good with it. But that's as far as we can go. So yeah, in theory, if they got Johnny Depp, I'm good, but just fan casting, that's usually the big problem with it. Senpaigar writes, I was watching Revenge of the Sith. I know it had to end that way, but it brings me down. What film sits bad with you because the bad guys win? What film brings me down because the bad guys win? I don't know. I mean, it's rare that the bad guys win. It's rare that happens in movies. And usually when they do, it's usually kind of refreshing because it's different. And I can't really think of one that brings me down. The one film that kind of jumps to mind a little bit right now is, what was the name? Hold on a second. Let me bring up, I'm forgetting the name of the film that was just out, probably because I didn't like the film that much, even though I was really looking forward to it. Let me go to James Gunn's producing credits here. Brightburn was the name of the movie. Brightburn. I'll bring it up here so you guys can remember the movie I'm talking about. The one where it's a what if movie. You're like, what would kind of happen? Like, it's not Kal-El, but what if a character like Kal-El, like a baby landed on Earth, but the baby was bad? What happens then? And that's kind of what Brightburn is. Super interesting idea for a movie. Movie wasn't very good in my opinion. And a movie that at the end, the bad guy wins. But I mean, it's hard to say that it brought me down. I don't know if I was brought down just because of the story of it. Like, oh, the bad guy won, I feel down. Or if I just felt down because I didn't think the movie was all that good. Like, if that's the case, like maybe it's just the fact that the movie wasn't all that good. Maybe that's the thing that brought me down. I'm not sure. But again, it's hard for me to think of one off the top of my head, Senpai Gar, because like I said, normally the bad guys don't win. And when they win, it's kind of a change of pace that, ooh, the bad guy wins. How different. So I don't mind it so much. Mike T writes, speaking of Dennis Quaid, what are your thoughts on the movie Frequency? I like Frequency, as a matter of fact. I watched it all the time as a kid, but I've learned lots of movies I liked as a kid were dumpster fires. Looking at you, Batman and Robin. That's a good, it's true, right? Like, I remember Pete's Dragon being one of the greatest movies ever when my mom and dad showed it to me as a kid. And then you see it again, the original one, see it again. It's like, it's still charming, but that's true. I like Frequency. I thought Frequency was good. It's not one of those ones that I remember fondly like Princess Bride or anything like that, but it was good enough that it had enough of a core fan base that they then turned it into a TV show not long ago. It didn't last very long, but they did run it as a TV show not so long ago. So yeah, I'm one that I like that. I like Frequency personally. All right. Jose Miaz writes, I really love Anakin Betrayal, Order 66. I mean, listen, there are people, I think, you know me, I think the prequels are dumpster fires, but there are good things about the prequels that even I like. And there are people who really do like the prequels. But I found that there are even people who dislike the prequels that still like Revenge of the Sith. And to me, Revenge of the Sith is, I define it as the least offensive of the prequel movies. The betrayal is obviously something that was being looked forward to since the beginning of the prequels. I mean, that's ultimately what the prequels were about leading up to the moment that Vader betrays everybody, right? That Anakin becomes Vader. That's what they were looking forward to. And while I may not have liked how it was executed, the concept of it was solid. And it is heartbreaking to a lot of people. And that's why some people like that movie. Richard Karate writes, let's see. Best Oliver Reed performance. Great actor. Surprised he never won an Oscar. Really? He never won an Oscar? And he was also run up to Sean Connery for Bond. I thought he would have been a great Bond. Best one. Well, let's go and look up some of his all-time greats. Now, I remember him as we bring up his thing here. Hold on a second. Let me click on that. I obviously remember him. I think it's his final performance was in Gladiator, right? When I think of him, that's the first place my mind goes to was his final movie, which was Gladiator. Oh, well, apparently, according to his IMDb, that wasn't his last one. He was the narrator of something called Orpheus and Eurydice. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. At any rate, but I just love him that he's so good in that in Gladiator. So that's what I always think of him in. So I don't know, like you going through, God, like you go through his filmography. It's like, holy shit. You remember, like I'm forgetting like all these movies he was in. And it just goes on and on. His career goes all the way back to the 50s. Let me just run down to the beginning. Yeah. Like he was started as a few uncredited things in the 1950s. His career really got started around 1960, but he got a recurring role, a regular role on the Golden Spur in like 1959, 1960. But I don't know. When I think of him, my first one is Gladiator. I mean, it's the last one I saw him, but he was also just so good in that. Anyway, Richard Karate also writes, best Danny DeVito performance. I think Penguin. I'm not the biggest fan of the Danny DeVito Penguin, to be honest with you. I'm not the biggest fan of the Danny DeVito Penguin. I think, honestly, no one thinks of him in this, but I think his best performance might have been in Hoffa with Jack Nicholson. And you know what? Something is buzzing in my ear that he might have even got a Academy Award nomination for that. I'm not really sure, but let me just double check. Something tells me he might have gotten an Oscar nomination. Let me bring up his Oscar things here. No, I stand corrected. He was nominated as a producer for Aaron Brockovich. So Aaron Brockovich was nominated for Best Picture in 2001. He was not nominated for that. Taxi, obviously the TV show that made him famous. Oh, he was great in Throw Mama from the Train. Throw Mama from the Train. He was absolutely fantastic in that. But best performance, you know what? I'm going to stick with his performance in Hoffa. I just thought he was great in that. Let me just look this up here. Where? Why can't I even find it? Where the hell is it? Come on, don't tell me. There it is. Oh, wow, it was 1992. I was thinking it was like early 2000s. Holy crap, that movie's so much older than I thought it was. Holy crap, that movie's so much older than I thought it was. Anyway, John C. Reilly, a much younger John C. Reilly was in that as well. Hoffa, listen, Hoffa is not a beloved movie, but I watched it again, I'd say maybe about a year and a half or 2 years ago. And it had been a long time since I had seen it. But Hoffa is, I think it's great. I'll be honest with you. I thought Hoffa was better than The Irishman. And I like The Irishman. I like The Irishman. I like that movie. But I thought Hoffa was even better. But I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe because I thought the performances were so powerful or whatever. But I think that to this day might be my favorite Danny DeVito performance. Just might be my favorite Danny DeVito performance. All right, guys, listen. My voice is nearly completely gone, so I'm going to rifle just through a couple more here. I'm hanging in there as good as I can. We're approaching 3 hours here. Let me get through just last couple ones, and we'll wrap it up today. Alex Dietman writes, hey, John, I'm head of security and one of first responders at a hospital in Illinois where my supervisor said that we didn't have to wear masks. I don't pretend to know what the real answer to this is. Now, what I've heard, which could be totally wrong, what I have heard is that the nature of the virus is that the masks won't really help you much if you're not sick. What I've heard is, and this could be completely wrong, because I didn't have a doctor tell me this, was that really the masks more help if you are one of the people who are sick, and wearing a mask may protect the people around you. So, I mean, I don't know. If your boss heard the same thing I heard, and if that's legitimate information, which it may not be, then that's probably why they said that. Like I said, when I go out and I go into a grocery store, I'll wear a mask. But it's mostly so I can make people around me feel safer. I just want people around me to feel safer. It's not for me that I wear it. I wear it to make the people around me feel safer. So and listen, I'm no medical expert, Alex, but I'm just guessing that maybe that's why your boss said that. But again, do not take anything that I'm saying. I'm not a medical professional. So that's my thought on that. Richard Crotty writes, if we ever have John Bones Jones versus Khabib, would Khabib win? It all depends on what weight they fight at. If John Bones Jones comes, say, because Khabib is in lightweight. So like if Bones comes all the way down to welterweight and Khabib goes up to welterweight, Khabib kills him. Khabib kills him if they fought at, say, welterweight or less. However, if all John Bones has to do is stay at light heavyweight or even just come down to middleweight, which is much closer to his natural weight, and Khabib's got to go all the way up to middleweight and suddenly fighting a guy who's like 30 pounds heavier than what he's used to fighting, then John Bones Jones at light heavyweight or middleweight could win that fight. If it goes down closer to Khabib's weight, Khabib kills him. If it goes up closer to Bones's weight, I think Bones has a legitimate chance of beating him because it's both outside of their realm. So they're just so far apart in weight. It's difficult to say. Pound for pound, Khabib is better than John Bones Jones. There, I said it, and I stand by that. I completely stand by that. Pound for pound, Khabib is better than Jones. But that's pound for pound. Like, there are light heavyweights that Khabib could go up to and beat. John Bones Jones isn't one of them, though. I think if Khabib had to come all the way up to that weight, Bones would beat him. Bones would beat him, I think. But if Bones comes down anywhere near Khabib's weight, I don't even think it's close. I don't think it's close. I think Khabib just destroys him. But well, it's a what if that we'll never see. We will never. They're just too far apart in weight. We will never see John Bones Jones fight Khabib Nurmagomedov. It'll never happen. They're just too far apart in weight. But man, that would be a dream fight. It would be a dream fight if there was any conceivable way to actually make it happen. All right. Last question of the day, guys, because my throat is done. It's actually hurting to talk now. I can't go anymore. Jonah writes, you summed up Iron Man 3 perfectly. Another thing that bothered people was lack of Tony Stark in suit. I didn't mind the twist, but they wasted Ben Kingsley. See, I don't know that I agree that they wasted Ben Kingsley. I thought Ben Kingsley was quite entertaining in the movie. I thought he was quite entertaining in the movie. And I think that just because he doesn't end up being the Mandarin doesn't make him a waste of a character. I thought then what happened to him after that reveal was still entertaining. Yeah, so I don't agree. Now, again, I completely get why a lot of fans felt tricked or duped when they saw Iron Man 3, because they were being told we're going to get to see the Mandarin. That's what they were told. We were advertised that we were going to get to see the Mandarin, and you did a bait and switch on us. I get it. I'm not saying it bothered me, but I can totally understand why there were people who felt very, very bothered by that. I might even use the word betrayed. Felt a little betrayed by that. But I don't agree that it was a waste of Ben Kingsley. I don't know. I thought he was delightful in the movie. I liked him both as the Mandarin persona and as the actor persona. I liked both of them. I actually thought it was really quite good, but there were a lot of people. You're not wrong, dude. You're not wrong. A lot of people did not feel very happy about that at all. Listen, guys, for everybody else, from Alex Dietman, Richard Karate, more Alex, Tim Platt, Emmanuel Ericart, all the way up. Don't worry, guys. I'm going to do another open mic tomorrow, and we're going to start tomorrow's off. Like we're almost, we probably only had another half hour to go, but I'm out of it, guys. I got to tap. I got nothing left. My voice is done. We will do another open mic tomorrow, and we will start off with that, with your guys' questions. We'll get through all yours, and then we'll get into new ones tomorrow. So hang tight. Keep your eyes on the channel. It'll probably be, somewhere around 11 or probably 10 or 11 in the morning tomorrow, Pacific Standard Time. We'll do another open mic, and we'll start getting through the questions there. Guys, listen. Thank you so much for being here and making today's show a part of your day. It is such an honor and privilege. You guys have no idea. It is such an honor and privilege when I think about that. You guys choose to spend a part of your day hanging out with us here on the channel, talking about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news and all that kind of stuff. I hope you had a good time. I know I had a good time doing this. So thank you. And a special thank you to all you guys who sent in questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported this channel along the way as well, which allows me to support Robert and Jonathan and Ray and everybody else who appears on this channel. So thank you for that very, very much. And thanks for being here. Again, we'll be back again tomorrow. Another open mic. We'll talk about all the things that we want to talk about. So guys, again, stay safe. Look after yourselves. Look after the people around you. Be smart. Make lemonade out of the lemons that we got right now. Try to do the best you can to make somebody else's day better. And let's get all this BS behind us as fast as we can. But please take care of yourselves, guys. And that'll do it for me for now. I can't even raise my voice. That'll do it for me for now, guys. Thank you so much for being here. My name is John Campea. And until next time, bye-bye.